Chapter 803. At the peak of White Cloud Mountain, Yin Nanlai and Tao Master Ching Yi, who had been sitting cross-legged, stood up and looked at the void above the Nine Heavens Imperial Court with solemn expressions. The seemingly invisible, unknown, and undetectable gate at the entrance of the above heavenly realm suddenly shook violently. Then, the invisible light bridge that Xianlin Taoist had transformed into suddenly showed itself. As it twisted and changed, it had already returned to Xianlin Taoist's original appearance. Xianlin Taoist also revealed a shocked expression. The next moment, the gate at the entrance of the above heavenly realm seemed to have a huge suction force that sucked Xianlin Taoist inside. Slowly, the gate closed and seemed to have disappeared from the void. What exactly happened in the above heavenly realm? Tao Master Qingyi's expression was as dark as water. He tried to communicate with Tao Master Tai One and the others, but he failed. Silently, Yin Nanlai closed his eyes and sensed for a while. Then, he opened his eyes, and his expression became even more solemn. The clones, Dharma bodies, and incarnations that Master and the others cultivated are all gone. The suction force produced by the above heavenly realm is very strange. It seems that not only Junior Brother Xianlin was sucked in, but everyone in it, including their clones and Dharma bodies, was also moved away. Tao Master Ching Yi was silent for a while before saying, "The great Tao returns to origin." Yin Nanlai nodded. "I'm afraid it's as you expected, Uncle Master. I wonder if it was triggered by Master and the others, or by someone else. We named it the Spirit Sea of the above heavenly realm. Like the Dead Sea, it is the most mysterious existence in the great heaven primordial world." Slowly, he said, "Although we of Taishu Temple have explored it for many years, there are still many changes that we haven't grasped. Back then, Yudu in the heavenly sea caused the above heavenly realm to mysteriously close up. Now, it has suddenly triggered the great Tao returns to origin. The reason is hard to predict." The current head of the Taishu Temple looked at the Nine Heavens Imperial Court, at the indistinct and unfathomable door, a rare hint of worry appearing in his eyes. "The most important thing is, with this unforeseen event, the above heaven realm has actually closed again. Once it was closed, it will be difficult to open it from the outside." Although Yin Nanlai and Taoist Master Ching Yi could confirm that the Taoist Master and the others in the above heaven realm were safe and sound through the Fate Lantern, they were not harmed at all. However, if the status quo was maintained for a long time, it would be equivalent to the Grand One's supremacy and the others being trapped in the upper heavenly realm, unable to escape. This was definitely bad news for the Taishu Temple and the entire human cultivation world. Tao Master Ching Yi looked at Yin Nanlai and said, "Only you and I will know about this. The news must not be leaked. Otherwise, not only the Divine Land, but the entire Heaven Yuan Great World would be in chaos as well." Yin Nanlai nodded without the slightest hesitation. "This disciple understands. Keep all information from the outside world. If any of the disciples from the monastery were to visit and ask about this, all of them will reply that they are in seclusion within the void." He pondered for a moment and said, "If the Master of the Celestial Gate enters and is also trapped in the above heavenly realm, will there be any changes over at Xianmen Tianzong?" Tao Master Ching Yi stood at the peak of the White Cloud Mountain and looked up at the distant sky. After a moment, he said, "Pay attention to the situation over at Xianmen Tianzong, but the most important thing is to keep an eye on Tianwang Vast Land." Silently, Yin Nanlai said, "Senior Uncle Ching Yi, don't worry. Disciple and the Haotian Mirror will keep an eye on the movements of the demon race in Tianhuang Vast Land, especially if the Yudu race has reappeared on a large scale." At this moment, Lin Feng, who was in the above heavenly realm, which was also the Spirit Sea, was frowning as he looked at his two clones and two Dharma bodies with divine arts in front of him. He sensed carefully and immediately realized that something was wrong. The world of the Spirit Sea seemed to have been sealed up again. He wanted to leave, but he couldn't break through the power of the boundary here. "All the clones and Dharma bodies that are connected to me have been pulled to the side of my main body. I can't even use the void technique of two worlds to replace them." Lin Feng took out the realm-breaking stone. The surface of the jade gave off a faint glow, but the light at the top of the jade was very dim. The last time he moved Golden Cicada in the Ing Sea and tricked him into sending him to Tianwang Vast Land, the realm-breaking stone's power was severely depleted. Even now, it hadn't recovered completely. Lin Feng had once placed the realm-breaking stone in the mysterious heaven-time-space grotto heaven and tried to use the acceleration of time in the grotto heaven to let the realm-breaking stone recover as soon as possible. However, this fellow was very deceitful. Whether it was in the outside world or in the mysterious heaven-time, space, grotto heaven, it seemed to ignore the changes in the speed of time. It only followed its own rhythm and slowly recovered. After Lin Feng observed it, he realized that the time of this strange jade was always the same as the outside world. It seemed to have isolated the acceleration of the mysterious heaven-time, space, grotto heaven. At the moment, the realm-breaking stone could open a realm passageway between the two realms, but its power had not recovered to its peak, so it couldn't teleport people randomly again. Unfortunately, after experimenting, Lin Feng found that the realm-breaking stone couldn't open a space in the Spirit Sea. Perhaps a random teleportation could pass through the barrier of the Spirit Sea, but it couldn't directly create a realm passageway like when Taishu's clone escaped from Fangzhong Immortal Mountain and Zhu Hongwu Siege. It could open the Ing Sea realm, but it hit a wall in the Spirit Sea. Fortunately, according to Lin Feng's previous observations, it wouldn't take long for the realm-breaking stone to recover to its peak. He put away the realm-breaking stone and continued to move forward in the world of the Spirit Sea. It was not his style to wait for the realm-breaking stone to recover. During the period of time before the realm-breaking stone recovered, he would take the initiative to try to communicate with the Spirit Sea and reopen it. Only by doing so would he have greater hope. The only problem is, Lin Feng's brows didn't relax. This was because he could feel that although his connection with Yujing Mountain, Penglai Mountain, and Yingzhou Mountain still existed, it had become sluggish. Penglai Mountain and Yingzhou Mountain were currently hidden in the layers of illusions in the Ing Sea. There was still a long time before the three mountains would appear again. If the two mountains didn't take the initiative to appear, it was basically impossible to find them, so there was no need to worry. What he needed to worry about was Yujing Mountain, which Lin Feng was most at ease with. After Lin Feng was trapped in the upper heavenly realm, although he still had control over Yujing Mountain, his command communication was greatly hindered. At this moment, Yujing Mountain actually slowly emerged from the void and descended into the sector. It floated in the sky above the Kunlun mountain range. Yujing Mountain, which had always been hidden in the void, had appeared. Lin Feng very quickly noticed this through the connection between him and Yujing Mountain. His first reaction was that if people knew that he was trapped in the Spirit Sea, there might be many people who would invade Yujing Mountain and try to seize control of Yujing Mountain. When that time came, not to mention hostile forces, even his former allies might attack. However, Lin Feng soon felt half relieved. He realized that only his command communication with Yujing Mountain was hindered, but his connection with Yujing Mountain was instead compatible with the mysterious space of the Spirit Sea. After the effect of the Spirit Sea, if anyone tried to seize Yujing Mountain, they would immediately be suppressed by the Spirit Sea, which was probably even more terrifying than the Ing Sea. However, what he was worried about was that while he wasn't around, other people or things on Yujing Mountain were no longer protected by Yujing Mountain. If enemies came to invade, he had to be on guard. At this moment, on Yujing Mountain, the younger disciples did not know what was going on, but they didn't care. They thought that this was happening under Lin Feng's control. There was only a slight commotion on the cloud peak, but it quickly subsided. Meanwhile, Xiao Yin, Zhu Yi, and the others were slightly stunned. They immediately gathered together. Master didn't mention that Yujing Mountain actually appeared. A dark cloud appeared between Luo Qingwu's brows. However, it's really hard to say when it's in seclusion in the void. With Lin Feng's previous instructions, although they were a little surprised, they were calm, as usual. Zhu Yi's expression was solemn. Yujing Mountain suddenly emerged from the void, and now Master is in seclusion. We have to be on guard against an enemy invasion. All along, one of the things that gave other forces the most headaches about the celestial sect of wonders was that the Jade Capital Mountain, where the mountain gate was located, was hidden in the void, and its whereabouts were hard to find. It had always been Lin Feng who went to block other people's mountain gate, but no one could block Lin Feng's. Later on, although Cloud Peak and Cloud Mirror City were developing well, and the Xintian realm was established, so Xianmin Tianzong had some ties. However, when it came to a critical moment, they could abandon everything and climb Yujing Mountain. Their enemies could still do nothing to Xianmin Tianzong. Although Cloud Peak and the Xintian realm were developing well, Xianmin Tianzong's most important and essential foundation was still Yujing Mountain. However, now that Yujing Mountain had suddenly appeared in the void, Xiaoyan, Zhu Yi, and the others could not help but worry. Xianmin Tianzong actually had many enemies, and there was no lack of powerful almighties among them. If the other party saw through them, the consequences would be dire. Xiaoyan looked at the group of brothers and said solemnly, "Relax on the outside, but tighten on the inside. Act as usual to the outside world, but slowly withdraw internally. Maintain the suspicion of the outside world and prevent internal panic. Wait quietly for Master to come out of seclusion." Suddenly withdrawing their own businesses and personnel was certainly beneficial for protection, but it was equivalent to confessing without being pressed. It was clearly telling the enemy that they were currently weak, and that they could attack quickly. It was the same principle to suddenly be high profile to the outside world. Under false bravado, it would only make one look guilty. The best way was to maintain the same outward appearance and confuse the enemy, while reorganizing internally in an orderly manner to ensure that when there was really a change, they could react quickly to protect their own people and avoid unnecessary casualties. They could effectively adapt, defend, break through, or counterattack. The situation might not necessarily be that bad, but Xiao Yin was entrusted by Lin Feng to temporarily shoulder the burden of the entire sect. He had to consider all kinds of situations and be responsible for the sect's disciples. Zhu Yi said, "Inform third junior brother and the rest to return as soon as possible. Don't stay outside for too long. The other true disciples who are training outside should also return as soon as possible if they have nothing important to do. Tell them that there will be another internal competition among the true disciples." Luo Qingwu nodded and did not say anything else. She immediately crushed a voice transmission crystal and contacted Wang Lin and the rest. Li Yuanfang, who had been silent all this while, said silently at this moment, "We have to consider all kinds of situations and plan for the worst. Everyone knows that Yingzhou Spirit Mountain is in our hands. If there are really enemies who come to attack us, they will definitely pay attention to Yingzhou Spirit Mountain. If necessary, we can only expose the existence of Penglai Spirit Mountain within the sect." Xiao Yin and Zhu Yi nodded and looked at each other. Suddenly, they all laughed. "It's time to test us." Among the mountains of West Shu, 6 solitary peaks rose into the sky. Each of them was straight and steep, piercing through the clouds like 6 extremely huge, unsheathed swords. In the sky above these 6 peaks, there was another one floating in the sky. There was no support below it, but it was held up by the sword chi of the 6 peaks and hung in the void. On the peak of this mountain, in a hall that was not very big, sat a person. He was dressed in green, his face was fair and clean, and his facial features were ordinary. There was not a trace of sword flowing out from his body. He was sitting cross-legged on his knees, holding a very ordinary sheathed cyan steel longsword. The current sect master of Mount Shu Sword Sect, Xian Longsheng. At this moment, Xian Longsheng, who was dressed in green, was looking in the northwest direction, in the direction of Mount Kunlun. Chapter 804. Xian Longsheng's expression was calm as he gazed out of the hall, passing through layers of void and looking in the direction of Kunlun Mountain. The hall he was in right now had simple decorations. There were no tables or chairs, only a few cushions placed on the ground. However, There were 3 sword marks on the wall behind Xi and Longsheng. The 3 sword marks themselves were nothing special. Any foundation establishment or golden elixir period sword cultivator could create even more terrifying marks. However, the 3 sword marks on the wall gently vibrated as if they had their own thoughts and consciousness. Why did Xianmin Tianzong's Yujing Mountain suddenly appear from the void? A voice came from a sword mark on the right. It sounded like metal clashing or thunder. Xian Longsheng calmly answered. Usually, there's a special reason for Yujing Mountain to appear from the void, but there was no sound this time. Something must have happened. The Immortal Heaven Sword can vaguely sense that the sky-crushing sword is on Yujing Mountain right now. Xian Longsheng said slowly. Before, when Yujing Mountain appeared, the Immortal Heaven Sword couldn't sense it. It must be that after Lin Feng refined the sky-crushing sword, he became one with the sword and cut off the Immortal Heaven Sword's sense. Of the 3 sword marks, a hoarse and old voice came from the sword mark on the left, like iron and stone violently rubbing against each other. From this change, we can tell that the problem lies with Lin Feng himself. That's why he can't hide from the ominous sword. When Yujing Mountain was in the turbulent void, it was still concealed by the turbulent void. Now that the ominous sword and Yujing Mountain appeared together, the Immortal Heaven Sword immediately sensed it. Xian Longsheng said slowly, "Everything is unknown. It is still too early to say." The sword mark on the right asked, "Longsheng, how much longer will it take for you to recover?" Xian Longsheng answered, "Not far. I can already fight, but I still need some time to fully recover." The hoarse voice from a sword mark on the left came again. Now that something has happened to Xianmin Tianzong, it is the best time to seize the sword. The voice from the sword mark on the right, which sounded like metal striking each other, said, "It's true that stones from other mountains can be used to attack jade, but blindly spying on others and trying to take it by force, while neglecting one's own cultivation, is not advisable either. Cloud Forest Realm, Tianjia Peak, West Hill City, we've exchanged blows with Mystic Gate's Sect Master Lin Feng 3 times. Our gains are already not shallow. Longsheng has already taken that step. How long are you going to wait?" From a sword mark on the left, the hoarse voice of the Shu Mountain Sect's Grand Supreme Elder, Xia Luosher, could be heard. After a moment of silence, he said, "Uncle Master Tsongming is right. However, if Xianmin Tianzong, that ominous sword, wants to achieve creation, he must step on our sect's celestial sword to advance. Such a contradiction is irreconcilable. Since that's the case, we should strike first to gain the upper hand and kill our opponent first. After the Battle of West Hill City, we have been concealing our strength and biding our time in order to increase our own strength. Other than you triggering the Deva's 5 Blight Tribulation again, the Sect Master has also taken that final step. Now that the tribulation is about to pass, our sect's strength has increased, but Xianmin Tianzong is showing signs of weakening. Under such circumstances, it's time for us to make a move. If that Lin Feng is in death's seclusion in the void, or is trapped in some dangerous place, we can even make his Yujing Mountain, from the sword mark on the right. The voice of the Shu Mountain sect's previous elder, Sword Venerable Tsongming, sounded faintly, "Luosher, calm your heart. Fear has arisen in your heart." His tone was neither hurried nor slow, and his voice was like rolling thunder. If one does not think far ahead, there will be immediate worries. Thinking long-term is a good thing, but Luosher has disturbed your heart. Jia Luosher suddenly fell silent and did not answer. Xian Longsheng said faintly, "Junior brother Jia, to pass the Deva's 5 Blight Tribulation, in addition to cultivation level, magical powers, and spiritual power, one state of mind and are also very important. You've been too focused on Lin Feng and his heaven-crushing sword, but you've gradually lost confidence in your own heavenly immortal sword chi. You should know that in these few years, your sword cultivation has not only not improved, but has regressed." The sword mark on the left twisted violently, but the wall did not shatter or form new cracks. The sword mark seemed to be something drawn on, but also like an ink dragon coming to life on the paper, constantly twisting. Xian Longsheng ignored it and said calmly, "At the beginning, We had already agreed that Lin Feng's sword could be used as a reference. But after West Hill City, you began to neglect the essentials. Jie Luosher said in a low voice, Xian Longsheng, you still have the face to say that? Not to mention the complicated situation in Cloud Forest Realm. You lost again and again at Tianjia Peak and West Hill City. The other party killed your Dharma body at Tianjia Peak, and the Heavenly Immortal Sword was damaged in the battle at West Hill City. Even if we originally agreed to figure out Lin Feng's sword Dao, you have completely embarrassed Shu Mountain. Xian Longsheng's expression was tranquil. Back then, the Blood River flooded Shu Mountain, and the Taotai swallowed 10,000 swords. But what was the final result? Blood River Taoist killed 480 million blood godchildren by the great immortal heaven manifestation sword formation. And when they fought again, he was seriously injured by the heavenly immortal sword, which led to his death. The primordial Taotai swallowed 10,000 swords of Shu Mountain, but its abdomen was pierced by 10,000 swords, and it was finally killed by the heavenly immortal sword. Jie Luosher was silent for a while. The two things that Xian Longsheng had mentioned were both great disasters in the history of Shushan. At the same time, they were also humiliations. But under the pressure, the Shushan sword sect had successfully broken through themselves and returned the humiliation to the enemy 100 times over. Don't use the glory of the ancestors to flatter yourself. Jie Luosher's voice became hoarser and more ear-piercing. If you are so arrogant, you will bring disaster to Shu Mountain. Slowly, Xian Longsheng shook his head. My ancestors are already dead. Naturally, they can't come back to life and help Shu Mountain advance again. I'm just telling you that the Shu Mountain sword Dao is not to be trifled with. I did suffer setbacks at Tianjia Peak and West Hill City, and in terms of cultivation, I am inferior to Lin Feng. This is nothing to be ashamed of. But what's important is the present, not the future. So, I've finally taken this step, and I've successfully taken this step. The sword mark on the left suddenly calmed down and no longer vibrated. The voice of Sword Venerable Firmament came from the sword mark on the right. Luosher, your thinking is not wrong. The change in Xianmen Tianzong this time is indeed worthy of our attention, but there is a problem with your mentality. Heaven Punishment Sword is indeed the mortal enemy of Shu Mountain Immortal Heaven Sword. We cannot coexist with each other, and there will definitely be a battle. However, that is because Shu Mountain Immortal Heaven Sword wants to improve, not because we are afraid of Heaven Punishment Sword's future success. Now, the world is changing rapidly. Yudu Minghua has reappeared, and Great Heavenly Wheel, Immortal Dragon City, and Grand Imperial Palace have appeared one after another. No matter if it is Tianhuang, Vast Land, or Divine Land, there are undercurrents surging. Shu Mountain naturally has to make plans early. Xian Longsheng nodded and said calmly, I understand. In a cave abode on Shu Mountain, a tall and withered elder sat silently. Light and darkness intersected in his eyes, but he was expressionless. The air faintly shook, and a middle-aged man with a thin appearance appeared in front of the old man. The sword energy around this middle-aged man was like mist and illusion, soft and ever-changing. It was Venerable Swordsman of the Moon Reflector, whose tying sword meat was seized by Lin Feng back then. Not long ago, he had finally refined his spirit to return to the void and advance to the second tier of primordial spirit realm. He was officially in charge of the supreme sword lineage of the 6 lineages of Shu Mountain, becoming the new sword master of the supreme sword. His title was also officially changed to Supreme Sword Venerable. However, what was slightly awkward was that the new Supreme Sword Venerable, didn't have the Supreme Sword in hand. He bowed respectfully to the elder. Grandmaster. The elder opened his mouth to speak, and his voice was ear-piercing like metal rubbing against each other. Xian Longsheng is too arrogant. He even fantasized that after experiencing the calamity and reaching the last day's realm, he would fight Lin Feng head-on. However, he never thought that avoiding the enemy's strength and striking their weakness is always the right path. If we don't strike when the enemy is at his weakest, when will we wait? The new supreme, sword venerable nodded and pondered for a moment before asking, could it be a scheme of the master of Xiangate? He deliberately pretended to be weak to mislead us and other forces that aren't on good terms with Xianmen Tianzong to attack us, and then set up an ambush? The elder was naturally the supreme elder of Shu Mountain, Jie Luoshi. Although he wanted to seize the time to launch a surprise attack on Kunlun Mountain, he was not a reckless person. He said indifferently, it's very simple. We'll know after we test them from the outside. The supreme, sword venerable understood tacitly. I understand. We can make our move on beyond Sky Mountain. After a short pause, he continued to ask, what if the master of Xiangate is indeed targeting Shu Mountain? A smile appeared on Jie Luoshi's skinny face. Uncle Tiangang has officially come out of seclusion. After Uncle Tsongming recovers this time, he's only one more tribulation away from completing his tribulation. You can rest assured. After the Battle of West Hill City, Lin Feng and the others forced Taishu Temple to change their previous policies. Now, it seems that it's very likely that he's trapped in a trap of his own making. However, we also have to guard against Taishu Temple. While paying attention to Xianmen Tianzong, we also have to pay attention to Baiyan Mountain. The supreme, sword venerable bowed. I understand. After he left, Jie Luoshi closed his eyes and sat on the spot for a long time without saying a word. After a long time, a long sigh came from the cave abode. Immortal heaven, heaven punishment. Jie Luoshi could deny it in front of others, but he could not lie to himself. He indeed had some doubts about his immortal heaven sword chi. All the swords in the world came from Shu Mountain, but was the immortal heaven sword chi really the number one swordsmanship of Tianyuan? If I can separate the immortal heaven and heaven punishment into two extremes and then combine them, can an even stronger swordsmanship be born? Is this swordsmanship the true limit of Tianyuan swordsmanship? A thought uncontrollably lingered in Jie Luoshi's mind, making his heart burn. At that time, the swordsmanship of Shu Mountain will be fully deserving of being the number one swordsmanship of Tianyuan. The great nine heavens godly sword and heaven punishment sword can only bow their heads. Almost at the same time, in a hidden medium-class world in the void of the heavens, sinister winds blew everywhere. It was like the netherworld. On the ground stood a majestic but pitch-black palace-like building. In the cold and gloomy main hall in the center of the palace, there were 9 black dragons coiled around a huge golden chair with a back. A tall man in black stood in front of the golden chair, looking at it with a complicated expression. At this moment, a figure appeared out of thin air in the main hall and bowed to the man in black. Greetings, Hall Master. Chapter 805. The Hall Master of the Underworld Hall, Su Anda, was a tall, middle-aged man. He had a beard on his chin, and his eyes were bright. However, if one looked closely, one would notice that the depths of his eyes were as dark as an abyss. At the bottom of the abyss, black fog lingered, and there were faint rays of black light circulating. Every ray of black light was like a face in pain. Although the faces of the people formed by the black light were filled with pain, they were all sitting cross-legged in the black fog with their hands forming seals, as if they were cultivating some kind of technique. Su Anda's back was facing the entrance of the hall. Silently, he looked at the black dragon throne in front of him, until a figure appeared in the hall and bowed to him. Subordinate Sikong Yu greets the Hall Master. Su Anda turned around and looked at the black-robed old man who had appeared in the hall. The old man's hair was white, but one could still see the handsomeness of his youth on his face. His expression was calm, but there was a hint of arrogance in it. However, in front of Su Anda, this old man by the name of Sikong Yu maintained his utmost respect. Su Anda looked at Sikong Yu and said silently, "Officer, I heard that you had a brother called Sikong Nan when you were in the Myriad Ghost sect. Not only were you fellow disciples, but you were also biological brothers. Back then, both of you reached the advanced Yuanying realm, and you even reached the primordial spirit realm. Was that a good story in the Myriad Ghost sect?" Sikong Yu nodded. "Hall Master, That was indeed the case. However, it was a pity that my brother was killed when the sword cultivators of Mount Shu came to challenge him. Only a remnant of his soul was left in the broken underworld devil sect's secret treasure, the underworld pearl. I wanted to escape with the underworld pearl, but I was heavily injured by the enemy. As a result, I lost the underworld pearl and was separated from my brother. Since then, I have not been able to find the underworld pearl. Sikong Yu paused for a moment before continuing. However, from what I know now, the underworld pearl is in the hands of the master of Xian Gate's third disciple, Wang Lin. Back then, in the void battlefield, his physical body was destroyed and his soul was injured. He only managed to survive because of the underworld pearl. There has been no news of my brother. If it wasn't for the underworld pearl's restriction completely erasing his remnant soul, he would have already fallen into the hands of the master of the celestial sect of wonders. When Sikong Nan was mentioned, Sikong Yu's expression remained the same, and his tone was calm. It was as if the person he was talking about wasn't his biological brother, but someone unrelated to him. However, Su Anda could clearly sense that when Sikong Yu spoke, there were a few rare fluctuations in his emotions. Previously, I developed a late-stage Yuanian cultivator who had a conflict with Wang Lin. He even caused a nascent divinity cultivator of the Underworld Hall to be captured by the Taoist Xianmen. I've already made that late-stage Yuanian cultivator hide, but not long ago he was still found and killed by Wang Lin. After Sikong Yu finished speaking, Su Anda said indifferently, including the previous King Qing Guang, the Underworld Hall has already lost a total of 5 Essence Soul Realm cultivators to the Taoist Xianmen. The king of the Underworld's orthodoxy was rather special. Regardless of how high one's cultivation level was, one could cultivate it. One could cultivate it from a young age to establish one's Tao foundation. In the future, one could also cultivate the Tao techniques of other sects and transform one's own foundation into the king of the Underworld's orthodoxy. After transforming the Tao technique into the king of the Underworld's orthodoxy, one could still retain 70% to 80% of the essence of the Tao technique they had originally cultivated. Therefore, the Underworld Hall was not purely a sect. Instead, it was similar to the Great Zhou dynasty and the Great Qin dynasty. Apart from nurturing their own experts, they would also recruit external experts to join them. The Underworld Hall did things secretly and developed in the dark. After a long period of accumulation, they had many experts, and their hidden forces were actually extremely huge. Even so, they had lost 5 Essence Soul Realm cultivators, including a Branch Hall Master. Even though the Underworld Hall was rich and powerful, they still had to gasp at such a loss. What was even more embarrassing was that there was no return for such a huge loss. Sikong Yu said, "There's news from the Divine Land." Xianmen Tianzong's Yujing Mountain suddenly appeared in the void for no reason. However, the Taoist Xianmen Linfeng did not appear. There are many strange things about this. Could it be that there are internal changes in Xianmen Tianzong? Su Anda nodded. There's this possibility. If there really are internal changes in Xianmen Tianzong, that will be our opportunity. However, this does not eliminate the possibility that the Taoist Xianmen Master Linfeng has set up a diversion to lure us into a trap. Sikong Yu bowed and said, "I have a great enmity with the Taoist Xianmen Master and his disciple. My previous dispute with Xianmen Tianzong was also caused by the cultivators under my control. I'm willing to be the vanguard in the contest between the Underworld Hall and Xianmen Tianzong. I'll help you test the strength of Xianmen Tianzong. If there really are internal changes in Xianmen Tianzong, the Underworld Hall can settle old scores with them." Sikong Yu already understood Su Anda's intentions from the moment he received the news to when Su Anda summoned him. Naturally, he took the initiative to volunteer himself. Su Anda smiled. "If it really is a trap set up by the Taoist Xianmen Master, I'll bring you back. My subordinates found a jade skull a while ago. It has just been stored in the treasure pavilion. Go and get it yourself." Sikong Yu bowed. "Thank you, Underworld Hall Master. I'll take my leave." He turned around and was about to leave. Su Anda seemed to have thought of something and suddenly asked, How are you going to test the strength of Xianmen Tianzong? Sikong Yu stopped. The disciples of the Taoist Xianmen master have come to the southern wasteland. 3 of them are his personal disciples and a protector. Wang Lin, Yu Hongyan, Yang Qing, Kong Nanhua. It's these people, right? Su Enda said lightly. Not only your old acquaintances. Since that's the case, let Qingguang go as well. Yes, Underworld Hall Master. Sikong Yu left respectfully. After leaving the hall, he walked forward and came to a valley outside the Black Palace. There was a small building in the valley. When Sikong Yu came to the valley, a young man walked out of the building. When he saw Sikong Yu, he cupped his hands and smiled. Master Yu, why did you come personally? If there's anything, just let your subordinates pass the message. Or, just tell me and I'll go over to your place. Sikong Yu looked at him and said indifferently, You've become the new King Qingguang. Just like me, you're already a branch hall master. How can I look down on you? With the potential you've displayed, you'll soon surpass me, Zhang Lai. The new King Qingguang, Zhang Lai, looked at Sikong Yu and smiled. Master Yu, you're overpraising me. Zhang Lai doesn't deserve it. He looked like an extremely tall young man. He was tall and slender. His face was handsome, and his facial features looked like they were carved by knives and axes. They outlined his tough but not stiff facial features, revealing a sense of masculine beauty. He moved slightly to the side and made way. Master Yu, please come in. Sikong Yu followed him into the small building. As he walked, he said, This time, I came because the hall master gave us an order. He wants us to do something. Oh, what is it? Zhang Lai asked. Sikong Yu answered, Xianmen Tianzong's Yujing Mountain suddenly escaped from the void and stopped in the sky above the Kunlun mountain range. However, there were no other movements. Xianmen's sect Master Lin Feng also didn't show himself. The situation is very abnormal. Zhang Lai and Sikong Yu sat down together. Hearing this, he nodded and said, I know about this. Why? Does the hall master have an idea about Xianmen Tianzong? Although the situation in Yujing Mountain is abnormal, there's no other evidence. No one can be sure what exactly happened in Xianmen Tianzong. Zhang Lai's finger gently brushed past his temple. If you think that something has happened to the celestial sect of wonders just based on this and recklessly pounce on them, you might end up with a broken head. If I were the hall master, I wouldn't be so reckless. Therefore, we have to test it out first. In other words, the task assigned to us is a mission that might very well lead to our deaths. Zhang Lai smiled. Master Yu, I've been implicated by you. The hall master doesn't like you, but he dragged me into it. Sikong Yu said, You defeated the hall master's personal disciple and ascended to the position of King Qingguang. That's the main reason. The previous King Qingguang died in the hands of Xianmen's sect master. The hall master left the position empty for many years. It was originally reserved for his own disciple, who knew that you would appear out of nowhere and defeat him. You even suppressed the other first-tier primordial spirit realm emissaries and obtained the position. The hall master isn't so narrow-minded. He only cares about big things. Zhang Lai laughed and didn't dwell on this issue. He asked directly, Then how do we test him? Xianmen realm? Sikong Yu raised a finger and shook it gently. The Xianmen realm is guarded by the bipolar sky peak, after all. There's no need to fight head-on. There's a better opportunity in front of us. Zhang Lai's eyebrows twitched. His gaze suddenly focused. Looking at the days, it seems like it's almost here. Seeing this, a smile appeared on Sikong Yu's pale face. It seems like you've understood. That's right. The disciples of Xianmen's sect master and sect protector Kong Nanhua are currently in the southern wilderness. They're all your old acquaintances. Of course, there are also people related to me. That Wang Lin also went there with them. Zhang Lai lowered his head and looked at the ground. A deep laugh came from his throat. In the end, his laughter became louder and louder. Ha! They're really old acquaintances. Sikong Yu said, According to this old man's knowledge, Kong Nanhua and Yu Hongyan have made great progress in their cultivation in the past few years. I presume that they've been cultivating in the heavenly abode with accelerated time for a long time. Seeking revenge from you, is probably their greatest motivation. I wonder what they'll think when they see you now. Zhonglai, you've proven your primordial spirit so quickly. Even I and the other Hall Masters were surprised. You've been cultivating in the time acceleration grotto heaven for hundreds of years. The countless battles in the void battlefield were indeed not wasted. Zhonglai raised his head and looked at Sikongyu with a smile. They become the disciples of Xianmen's sect master. I naturally have to hide in the void battlefield and the king of the underworld's world. Otherwise, if I'm exposed in the divine land, I'm not confident that I can escape from the Xianmen's sect master. He stood up. Even this time, we still have to be careful. Otherwise, if the Hall Master's judgment is wrong and there's no big change in Xianmen Tianzong, we'll provoke the Xianmen sect master's direct disciple. At that time, I'll have to follow in the footsteps of my predecessor. If that's the case, I might become the 10 kings of hell with the shortest tenure in history. Sikongyu asked, "Oh, what's your plan?" Zhonglai's gaze was calm. "It's not a plan. It's just a casual move I made in the past. Now, I'll take it out and play with them." Chapter 806. Southern Wasteland, Eagle Cry River Valley. In a forest outside the river valley was a large cemetery. Stone tablets were erected, and the names written on each stone tablet were engraved in the bones of Yuhong Yin, Kong Nanhua, and Zhao Huan. They stood in front of the tombstones, all falling into silence, not speaking for a long time. Not far away, Wang Lin, Yang Qing, and Zhou Yinsong were standing, also silently looking at the cemetery in front of them. At this time, all words were superfluous. Although they already knew what Yuhong Yin, Kong Nanhua, and Zhao Huan had encountered back then, but when they saw this cemetery with their own eyes, they still felt heavy. For Yuhong Yin and Zhao Huan, the people buried here were all companions, relatives, and compatriots that they had been with day and night. Yang Qing remembered the time when she personally built the tombstones for the people of Cloudwater Cave. For a moment, she also couldn't help but feel sorrow. Wang Lin was also silent. He vaguely remembered that back then his hometown faced the massacre of the late Yuanian cultivators. If it wasn't for him and Yang Qing fighting to the death, then he most likely would also have to face the same heart-wrenching scene. Zhou Yunsong's usual cold face at this moment slightly softened. His gaze looking towards the distant horizon seemed a bit empty, unexpectedly slightly distracted. No one knew what he was thinking about. Zhao Huan came to the two tombstones erected side by side. Slowly, he knelt down. The people buried here were his parents. Sister Hung Yin, Mr. Kong, thank you for letting my father and mother rest in peace. Zhao Huan's eyes were full of sorrow. Ever since he became his disciple, he had always called Yuhong Yin Master. These years, this is the first time he changed the way he called Yuhong Yin when he was a child. Yuhong Yin and Kong Nanhua both shook their heads. Yuhong Yin clenched his fists, saying word by word, "Zhonglai." Kong Nanhua's face was a bit pale, her bright eyes at this moment looking at the tombstones in front of her. The luster gradually dimmed. After they paid their respects to the people of the former society of the Strong Gale, Wang Lin slowly said, "Move all the graves back to Yujing Mountain." After a moment of silence, Yuhong Yin nodded. All right, they had already received a telepathic message from Luo Qingwu, who was on Mount Yujing. They were surprised to learn that Mount Yujing had suddenly revealed itself and descended upon the boundless world. Although the deduction of Xiao Yin and the others was a little cautious, it was not without reason. Therefore, Wang Lin and the others also decided to reduce the time they spent outside and return to Yujing Mountain as soon as possible. Although it was important for a person to be buried in peace after death, Yuhong Yin and Zhao Huan also agreed to move the grave. This time, if not for the fact that they were here to pay their respects, Wang Lin, Yang Qing, and the others would have returned as soon as they received Luo Qingwu's voice transmission. Besides, they were moving the grave, just like how Zhu Yi moved Meng Bingyun's grave back then. Moving away this land and this forest together, it would not damage the grave in the slightest. Kong Nanhua stretched out her hand and swept up her mana, storing away this forest and the grave together. After doing this, they prepared to return to Yujing Mountain. But just as they moved, Wang Lin's eyes flashed slightly. What a thick aura of death. With his reminder, everyone's divine sense extended into the distance. Then, they felt a thick aura of death condensing, soaring into the sky in front of them. There are new deaths, and a lot of them. It seems like a massacre. Yang Qing's brows furrowed tightly. They looked at each other and broke through the void, instantly arriving at the place. Sure enough, a city appeared in front of them, filled with an aura of death. Although the city was not big, the population was not small either. It was just that the city that was bustling in the past was currently silent, as if all the living beings in the city had disappeared. It had completely become a dead city, filled with an ominous feeling. In the eyes of Wang Lin and the others, they clearly saw a smoke-like black aura of death soaring into the sky, condensing and not dissipating. In the black smoke, there seemed to be countless aggrieved souls wailing mournfully. Twisted faces were densely packed together. It was a shocking sight. All the living beings in the city, be it humans or animals, were all dead at this moment. Not a single living being could be seen. However, there were no living beings, and even the corpses had disappeared. On the ground in the city, there were only puddles of white powder that could be seen everywhere. Kong Nanhua's divine sense swept over, and her gaze was solemn. These puddles of white powder are the corpses of the dead. All the living beings died of poison. It was a very strong poison that mortals could not withstand at all. Even cultivators, if their cultivation was low, would also be poisoned to death. So when mortals are poisoned to death, not even their bones remain. Wang Lin and the others were a little surprised. Such a strong poison could not be controlled by mortals at all. It could break through a cultivator's protective dharma power. If mortals wanted to use such a poison, they would be poisoned first. In other words, it was done by a cultivator. But if a cultivator who practiced the divine sense of poison caused such a large-scale massacre, it was mostly for practicing. However, at this moment, the remaining poison was everywhere. After killing tens of thousands of living beings, the poison power was not collected. It did not seem that the cultivator who practiced the divine sense of poison intended to do this. Could it be that a cultivator who practiced the divine sense of poison had an accident on the way, which caused this tragedy? While everyone was puzzled, they suddenly looked into the distant sky and saw several sword lights flashing. The sword lights were colorful and looked different, but they all revealed a similar ancient aura. People from the Wilderness Sword Sect. Wang Lin and the others nodded. A few years ago, the Wilderness Sword Sect had established a good friendship with Xianmen Tianzong. They often contacted each other, so they were familiar with each other. This place was located in the southern wasteland. To the west was the eastern end of the great Hengduan Mountain, which was the territory of the Wilderness Sword Sect. Once such a thing happened at their doorstep, someone would naturally come to check it out. Unexpectedly, the situation was more serious than what Xianmen Tianzong and the others had expected. The leader of the Wilderness Sword Sect was a cultivator at the late stage of the Golden Elixir, named Immortal Qianin. When he saw Wang Lin, Yu Hongyan, Kong Nanhua, and Yang Qing and the others, he quickly saluted them. He looked at the deathly silent city below and sighed. This is already the fourth dead city. Wang Lin and the others looked at each other. According to what Immortal Qianin said, it was not an accident. Kong Nanhua, Yu Hongyan, Yang Qing, and Zhao Huan frowned at the same time, and their faces showed anger. The enemy had slaughtered 4 cities. How many people had died in vain? Where are the other 3 cities? Wang Lin asked. Immortal Qian quickly told them the location. Hearing this, Xianmen Tianzong and the others' expressions did not change, but they were slightly moved. Including the dead city under their feet, the 4 cities were basically arranged in a line. The general direction was actually the same as the direction where they returned to the Kunlun Mountain. Although there were 3 cultivators at the Yuanying stage, Wang Lin, Yu Hongyan, and Kong Nanhua, it was not a problem for them to walk through the hollow. It was impossible for them to return to the Kunlun Mountain in one step. They returned to the mountain and took the shortest straight line. Now the arrangement of the 4 dead cities was similar to this route. Are they coming for us? Wang Lin and the others had the same idea. Realizing this, Yu Hongyan looked at Wang Lin. Third senior brother, should we investigate? After thinking for a while, Wang Lin shook his head. Continue moving forward, don't stop. Yu Hongyan and the others were slightly surprised. Kong Nanhua, who was at the side, said, the enemy purposely set up a deceptive formation to make us fall into his trap. Ignore him and continue moving forward. If we follow our pace, we can turn passivity into initiative. Although we don't know how big the area of the enemy's plot is, we should try to escape as soon as possible. When we leave the area of his plot, he will either give up or chase us. At that time, it will be our turn to hold the initiative. Yu Hongyan and Yang Qing nodded. If that's the case, let's do as third senior brother said. Everyone did not explain much. After hinting that immortal Qianyin was in danger, they immediately took their leave. However, after walking for a short distance, Yang Qing suddenly shouted, as if she was struck by lightning, wait! Wang Lin and the others stopped and came out from the void. They looked at Yang Qing with a baffled expression. Ever since Yang Qing's cultivation increased, she had become more and more calm and steady. At this moment, her expression was clearly a little anxious. I felt it. I faintly felt the lunar true water just now. Yang Qing opened her mouth. The lunar true water that comes from the same source as me. Yu Hongyan was baffled. The lunar true water that comes from the same source as you? Didn't you obtain that true water vein all by yourself? Yang Qing shook her head, as if she had something difficult to say. She did not explain further and only used her divine sense to scan the surroundings, searching anxiously. Wang Lin glanced at Yang Qing, then also released his own divine sense, extending it into the distance. His connection with the lunar true water that Yang Qing mentioned was naturally not as close as Yang Qing herself. However, his divine sense was much stronger than Yang Qing's. Since Yang Qing said that the true water came from the same source as him, then Wang Lin searched according to Yang Qing's lunar true water spiritual energy fluctuations. Very soon, Wang Lin found something. He guided Yang Qing to look for it and quickly confirmed the direction. Everyone followed behind Yang Qing curiously. After flying in the air for a while, Yang Qing's speed became slower and slower. She looked at the mountains in the distance in a daze. At this moment, even Zhou Yunsong and Zhao Huan could clearly see that there were many streams between the undulating hills. At the side of one of the streams, a white-clothed girl was sitting on a rock with a blank expression, staring at the flowing water below in a daze. The girl looked like she was already in her 20s, but there was a hint of childishness between her brows, as if she was only a 13 or 14-year-old girl. She lowered her head to look at her reflection in the water, blinking her eyelashes. She felt that she was so familiar, yet so strange at the same time. The white-clothed girl sighed softly and turned to look at the side. There was a yellow grasshopper there, hand-folded by someone. Because it had been a long time, the woven straw had long lost its moisture. However, the craftsmanship was exquisite, and it still looked alive. The white-clothed girl stared at the yellow grasshopper, and her gaze couldn't help but be dazed for a moment. Senior Brother Yang, she hesitated, then lightly tapped the grasshopper with her finger. A weak jade-green stream of water gushed out from her fingertip and landed on the grasshopper. The grasshopper immediately turned from yellow to jade-green again. It wasn't dyed, but the woven straw of the grasshopper seemed to have regained its life. Seeing this, the white-clothed girl smiled, and she was sincerely happy. Suddenly, a faint throbbing appeared in her heart. The white-clothed girl hesitantly turned her head to look behind her. She saw a purple-clothed youth standing not far behind her, his expression incomparably complicated. Shock, joy, both at the same time, but more than that, despair and sorrow. Chapter 807. The air between the mountains seemed to have solidified and even the howling mountain wind quietened down. Silently, there was only Yang Qing and the woman in white looking at each other. Wang Lin, Yuhan Yin, Kong Nanhua, and the others stood in the distance, looking at the two of them in silence. At this moment, they already knew that the woman in white was the person Yang Qing had been thinking about all these years. She was his junior sister, Fong Ting, when he was learning in the Cloudwater Cave. The two of them were childhood sweethearts and had even pledged to marry each other. When they were deeply in love, they even had skin contact. This was the reason why Yang Qing found it difficult to speak just now. It was also because of this that a part of the lunar true water that Yang Qing had flowed into Fong Ting's body. Back then, when Yang Qing had just entered the sect, his innate yin and yang balanced special root bone was hidden deep and did not appear. Lin Feng had wondered why Yang Qing was evaluated by the system to have a 9-point root bone. At the same time, he also felt that Yang Qing was a little strange. Later, when he heard Yang Qing mention Fong Ting, Lin Feng then realized that the reason why he felt that Yang Qing was strange was that Yang Qing was no longer a boy. However, Yang Qing used the lunar true insight to build a beer platform and reach the middle stage of foundation establishment. However, the physique of a male was generally more yang. There was no problem in cultivating yang Dao techniques. However, cultivating Dao techniques with excessive yin qi required a little true yin in primordial yang. If one lost his virginity early and lost his virginity, it was almost impossible to cultivate a yin attribute Dao technique. At the very least, he had to build a beer platform and condense a Dao cauldron. Only after his foundation was stable could he let it go. Therefore, Yang Qing, who was no longer a boy, cultivated the lunar true insight to build a first-grade beer platform, which made Lin Feng very puzzled at that time. It was because of this extremely abnormal situation that inspired Lin Feng to investigate Yang Qing's physique. Only then did he finally discover where Yang Qing's 9-point root bone value came from. Back then, when he was young and impulsive, it made the introverted Yang Qing very embarrassed. Therefore, when Yuhan Yin asked him why Fong Ting had the same source as him, Yang Qing kept his mouth shut. But after seeing Fong Ting, Yang Qing suddenly froze and did not dare to step forward. Wang Lin and the others carefully scanned Fong Ting with their divine senses and fell silent. After a long time, Yang Qing came back to his senses. He landed in the middle of the mountain mausoleum and walked towards Fong Ting slowly. But at this moment, the expression on his face was incomparably complicated. Apart from the initial pleasant surprise, there was also sorrow and despair that seeped deep into his bones. But when Fong Ting really turned around, the sadness and despair on Yang Qing's face quickly disappeared, leaving only joy. Ting Ting, Yang Qing smiled and opened her arms to Fong Ting, but Fong Ting didn't walk forward. Her face was also full of surprise, but it was mixed with many doubts. When she turned around just now, the sadness and despair on Yang Qing's face that had not yet dissipated was clearly seen. Even at this moment, she could feel the pain from the joy in Yang Qing's eyes. Fong Ting asked in confusion, "Senior brother Yang, what's wrong?" Wang Lin and the others sighed softly when they sensed Fong Ting's beauty. This girl wasn't a beauty at first glance, but she was very pleasant to look at. Her facial features were soft, and the corners of her eyes were smiling, making people feel very comfortable. Yang Qing smiled faintly. "I'm fine. It's just that I didn't expect to actually reunite with you here." For a moment, I was so happy that I didn't know what to do. Even my mind was a little muddled. Fong Ting tilted her neck slightly and looked at Yang Qing. Yang Qing walked in front of her and asked, "Ting Ting, where were you before?" "Back then, I searched the surroundings of the Cloudwater Cave, but I couldn't find you. All these years, I've been walking in the Divine Land, but there has been no news of you." Yang Qing held Fong Ting's hands. The moment he held them tightly, he couldn't help but feel sorrow and almost cried. But he stabilized his emotions and looked around. "Do you have any companions nearby? Why are you here alone?" Fong Ting looked at Yang Qing's eyes in confusion, as though she wanted to see into his heart. but she quickly retracted her gaze and said softly, I also don't know why I'm here. At that time, a monstrous fire suddenly appeared in the Cloudwater Cave. The green flames seemed to be endless. Fong Ting's eyes revealed a look of reminiscence. Her eyes were filled with fear, as though a nightmare was coming again. I kept running, but the green flames were everywhere. I couldn't escape at all. The flames rushed over. Master died, Uncle Master died, Senior Sister died, and even Grandmaster died. There was green water covering my body, but there were too many green flames. The fire was too strong, and the green water couldn't stop it. I felt like I was going to die, but I couldn't accept it. I really wanted to see you again. The fear in Fong Ting's eyes suddenly rose to its peak. At the time, I felt like I heard a voice next to my ear asking me why I was so persistent. At the time, my head was spinning, and I could not think at all. I can't remember how I answered him. I only remember that he suddenly laughed at the end. That laughter was very low, as though it was stuck in my throat. It made me panic, and it made me even more afraid. I was more afraid than when I faced the fire. Yang Qing opened her arms and hugged the trembling Fong Ting. She could clearly feel that she was shivering. After a long time, Fong Ting's emotions calmed down slightly. She continued, Since then, I don't know anything. After that, I was always half asleep and half awake in a daze. Sometimes it's rare for me to be completely awake like this, but I realize that I can't remember anything. I only realize that I seem to be older. It seems like every time I sleep for at least a year, but the time I wake up is very short. Most of the time, it's just a short moment. Fong Ting leaned in Yang Qing's arms and looked at the water in front of her. She murmured, This is the longest time I've been awake in all these years. My body can also move freely, and I can even control the dark green water. It's just that my cultivation seems to have been crippled, and I can't use spiritual qi or magic anymore. Before this, I was awake 2 or 3 times, but each time it wasn't long. It's just that the time between waking up and sleeping these few times doesn't seem to be that long. Yang Qing hugged her. Although there was still a smile on her face, the sorrow in the depths of her eyes became even more intense, almost uncontrollable. At this moment, in the distance, Wang Lin, Kong Nanhua, and the others suddenly frowned and looked at the edge of the sky on the other side. There, a crack suddenly appeared in the void, and a few cultivators walked out. Yang Qing was shocked. She looked up and saw a few cultivators in white robes and a few cultivators in black robes standing together in the sky, looking straight at her and Fong Ting. People from the reincarnation sect, the heavenly path, and the hungry ghost path. Yang Qing and the others could barely distinguish them from their clothes and the characteristics of their magic power. This area was relatively barren. To the west was the eastern end of the great Hengduan Mountain, which was the territory of the Wilderness Sword sect. To the east was the territory of the Reincarnation sect. The leader of the Heavenly Path was a late-stage Yuanian cultivator, and the leader of the Hungry Ghost Path was a middle-stage Yuanian cultivator who followed the lead of the Heavenly Path. This middle-stage Yuanian cultivator was called Ancestor of Yin Ghost. He looked at the late-stage Yuanian cultivator from the Heavenly Path, pointed at Fong Ting, and said, Ancestor Xia. That's her. The white-haired ancestor of Xia looked at Yang Qing and slightly narrowed his eyes. Are you immortal Yang Qing, a subordinate of the master of the Xin sect? Yang Qing sighed, and all the emotions in her eyes disappeared. She pulled Fong Ting behind her and cupped her hands to the ancestor of Xia and Yin Ghost in the sky. I'm Xinmin Tianzong, Yang Qing. Nice to meet you. Noticing that Yang Qing pulled Fong Ting behind him, the people of the reincarnation sect slightly frowned. Ancestor of Xia said in a low voice, You must have told the people of the Wilderness Sword sect about the 4 mortal cities being slaughtered, right? Yang Qing nodded, Yes. Slowly, Ancestor of Xia said, Do you know that a junior disciple of the Heavenly Way of the Reincarnation sect was also killed in one of the cities? Yang Qing slightly frowned, but did not speak. Ancestor of Xia pointed at Fong Ting. A disciple of the Hungry Ghost sect of the Reincarnation sect saw it with his own eyes. It was the woman behind you who did it. Fong Ting looked at Ancestor of Xia in shock, and her face was full of confusion. I? How could I? Ancestor of Ingo snorted. Why not? Look at you now. Even your memory and thinking have been restricted. Maybe you really don't remember what happened before, but it doesn't mean that you didn't do it. Were you? Others can't see it, but the hungry ghost sect can see it. You. Shut up. Yang Qing suddenly shouted, and the heaven and earth within 1,000 miles seemed to shake violently. Ancestor of Yin Ghost was dazzled, and his divine soul kept beating as if it would leave his body at any time. He could not help but be shocked. Yang Qing's cultivation should only be at the late stage of golden elixir, right? Ancestor of Xia slightly frowned, and with a cold snort, he neutralized Yang Qing's magical power aura that suddenly spread out, stared at Yang Qing, and said in a deep voice, "Disciple of Xianmen Tianzong, don't tell me you want to protect this woman. There are many strange things in this matter. Since we have encountered it, we will definitely investigate it." Wang Lin's voice suddenly sounded between heaven and earth. "Since a disciple of your sect died because of this, I will inform your sect when the result is out." Looking at the indifferent, white-haired young man in front of them, Ancestor of Xia and Ancestor of Ingo's hearts really turned cold. This was a super ruthless person who killed Yuanying like a dog when he was at the late stage of golden elixir, and the first god of slaughter under the master of Xianmen. Ancestor of Yin Ghost came back to his senses. Although he was afraid of Wang Lin, he was still a little angry out of shame. Xianmen Tianzong is really overbearing. Wang Lin did not even raise his eyelids. After saying that, he did not say anything more. He directly lowered his head and looked at Yang Qing. "Fifth junior brother, let's go. We will give you the explanation, but now we want to take people away. Let's see who can stop us." Ancestor of Yin Ghost choked, and even Ancestor of Xia was angry, but he did not dare to make a move. Before he finished speaking, Fong Ting, who was in Yang Qing's arms, suddenly changed. Her eyes, which were originally frightened and blank, suddenly became dull and numb. A shrill scream came from her mouth, and rays of green light penetrated every inch of her skin. Chapter 808. Fong Ting's eyes became dull, and a shrill scream came out of her mouth, which was frightening to the soul. Rays of green light came out of her body and wrapped her whole body. Gradually, she turned into a 3-meter-tall giant. Her whole body flashed with dark green light, and many strange runes flowed on her body. Although her body was enlarged a lot, the green giant's facial features were still like Fong Ting's. However, she didn't look like when she was in her 20s, but like a girl when she was 13 or 14 years old. However, the gentleness of the past were all gone. Her eyes emitted a fierce and violent light. Her beautiful face was twisted violently, showing a painful struggle, which made her look a little ugly. Then, a large number of fluff began to appear on her body. It was snow white and covered her whole body. She seemed to have turned into a snowman, and a faint fragrance floated out of her body. Yang Qing, who was the closest to her, felt dizzy as soon as she came into contact with this fragrance. She used her magic power to resist it, and could no longer suppress the sadness in the depths of her eyes. It was difficult for ordinary cultivators of the golden elixir period to resist this kind of poison, especially now that they were almost standing face to face. At such a close distance, if they didn't yuanying, they would almost be poisoned to death. Yang Qing's master was Lin Feng, and her magic power was amazing, so she didn't have to worry about it. On the side of the reincarnation sect's hungry ghost sect, a cultivator of the golden elixir period next to the great ancestor of Yin Ghost pointed at the suddenly changed Fong Ting and shouted, "It's her, like this!" The white fluff on her body drifted away, and people who came into contact with it would die instantly. In an instant, thousands of people were poisoned to death. Even Senior Brother Gu of the Celestial Tao, with his cultivation at the late golden elixir period, couldn't resist it. His magic power was destroyed in a short time, and his flesh and soul were all turned into nothingness. The golden elixir turned snow white in the blink of an eye, and then broke into white powder. If I hadn't been far away and left quickly, I would have also been poisoned to death. The great ancestor of Yin Ghost looked at Fong Ting with confusion, fanaticism, obsession, and intoxication in his eyes. He murmured to himself, "What a poisonous ghost! What a good trick!" Such a poisonous ghost could only be created by the ghost path and the divine ability of poison at the peak. But how'd he do it? He doesn't have a ghost infant or even a ghost core, but his lethality has already reached the level of a ghost king. This is truly too miraculous. I can vaguely see the inheritance of my hungry ghost sect, but it's different. It's closer to the myriad ghost sect of the past, but it's also bringing forth new ideas and improving to the next level. It's truly too miraculous for words. Stop it. Yang Qing raised her head and looked at Fong Ting in front of her. Her heart was cold and desolate. Yu Hongyan and the other disciples also felt sorry for him. When they first saw Fong Ting from afar, Wang Lin, Yu Hongyan, Kong Nanhua, and the others scanned her with their divine senses and immediately discovered the problem. The Fong Ting in front of him did not have a body of flesh and blood. She was no longer a living person. Instead, she was a spirit ghost whose soul had been refined by someone else using a secret technique. They thought it was a reunion after a long time, but before they had time to talk about the feelings of parting, they had been separated by yin and yang forever. Wang Lin had a deep understanding of the Tao of life, death, existence, and destruction. When he scanned Fong Ting carefully with his divine sense, he immediately found that even as a spirit ghost, Fong Ting's soul was incomplete. She couldn't reincarnate even if she wanted to. Once the ghost path technique was removed, her soul would immediately dissipate. What was more outrageous was that, in addition to being refined into a ghost, Fong Ting was also refined by someone using a secret technique and integrated with the divine ability of poison. Her poison was so fierce that it could slaughter all living beings. The previous death cities and the deaths of countless living beings were probably caused by Fong Ting. Being interrupted by Yang Qing, the great ancestor of Yin Ghost snorted coldly. "Hey, can't you talk about it? Since you protect this woman so much, could it be that this poisonous ghost was refined by Xianmin Tianzong?" "Hey, I didn't know that Xianmin Tianzong had such an ability before." Before he finished his words, the great ancestor of Yin Ghost suddenly screamed. A white light flashed in front of him and passed through his body. It didn't cause any harm to his body, but his many defenses were useless. The white light directly passed through many obstacles and cut toward the Yuanying of the great ancestor of Yin Ghost. The Yuanying celestial artifact, the emptiness-severing saber. Yang Qing raised her head and stared at the great ancestor of Yin Ghost. Her eyes turned slightly red. I said, "Shut up." The great ancestor of Xia frowned. He raised his hand, and a colorful light beam fell from the sky and covered the great ancestor of Yin Ghost. An immortal and indestructible aura was immediately released. The immortal divine light of the Great Law was one of the top secret methods of the reincarnation sect. It contained the concept of watching all living beings enter the reincarnation cycle and being immortal and limitless. At the Kunlun Mountain Spell Conference, Yang Liquan, a disciple of the celestial realm of the reincarnation sect, used this move. However, at that time, Yang Liquan's immortal divine light of the Great Law was suppressed by the great ancestor of Xia at the late Yuanying stage. The gap between the immortal divine light of the Great Law and the great ancestor of Xia was like that of a firefly compared to the sun and the moon. However, two lights, one green and one gold, suddenly burst out from Yang Qing's left and right eyes. The white saber light only paused for a moment and then emitted a mysterious power. It passed through the colorful light beam and continued to cut toward the Yuanying of the Great Law, of the Great Law, of the Great Law. Ancestor Yin Ghost used many secret techniques in an attempt to block or evade the saber light, but the saber light seemed to be invisible and intangible. It didn't harm Ancestor Yin Ghost's divine soul or physical body, but like maggots attached to bones, it pierced through the void, cut through the void, and stared at Ancestor Yin Ghost's Yuanying. Driven by Yang Qing's magic power, This magic device of Yuanying stage burst out an amazing and strange power, which made the ancestor of Yin Ghost, who was at the middle stage of Yuanying stage, completely unable to deal with it. Old ancestor Xia snorted coldly and felt a little embarrassed. Light flashed above his head, and a figure that was dozens of feet tall appeared. He wore a white robe and had 4 huge arms that held prayer beads, a water bottle, a scepter, and a bow. It was his heaven and earth dharma. The huge statue held a bottle in one of its arms and poured it toward old ancestor Yin Ghost. An invisible stream of water fell down and finally stopped the emptiness aura slashing saber. Then, it waved the scepter in its other hand and forced the emptiness aura slashing saber back. Ancestor Xia stared at Wang Lin and Yang Qing. "What? Are you going to kill us? Let's wait and see." After saying that, he did not stay any longer. His magic power swept up the old ancestor of Yin Ghost and the disciples of the reincarnation sect, and they hurriedly escaped into the void. Wang Lin raised his eyelids and looked indifferent. He stretched out his right hand, and Yang Qing shouted below, "Forget it, third senior brother. Let them go." At this moment, Yang Qing put away the emptiness aura slashing saber. Her angry face was full of disappointment. She waved her hand, and the golden true fire of the sun turned into a wall, blocking the white flocks flying around Fong Ting's body and burning them. However, the extreme poison seemed to be endless. At this moment, there was only violence and bloodthirst in Fong Ting's eyes. She let out a sharp scream, which made people shudder with fear and felt extremely uncomfortable. Wang Lin shook his head slightly. His magic power and spiritual qi rose above his head and turned into a light and shadow. In the light and shadow, a door appeared. The door was half black and half white, and the left side was as black as ink. Many images flashed, showing the changes of the sea in an orderly manner. It was full of an ancient and vicissitudes of the past. The right side of the door was as white as jade, and the reliefs on it were constantly changing. It looked messy, but it was full of countless possibilities, which made people feel infinite hope. The door suddenly opened, and a complete world appeared. There were many changes in the past, and the past could not be changed. However, the present could be grasped with one's heart, and the future was full of countless possibilities. Wang Lin comprehended the 4 symbols heaven-opening book and refined the 4 demonic gates, the ancient and present world. The ancient and present world fell and directly took Fong Ting in. The door suddenly closed, but as the door closed, the time in the ancient and present world seemed to suddenly flow backward. A power from the countless possibilities of the present and the future appeared, and it vowed to change the past. The door only closed for a moment. After a moment, the door opened again, and the world became normal again. At the same time, it also revealed Fong Ting, who had changed back to her original appearance. Yang Qing said softly, "Thank you, third senior brother." Wang Lin shook his head, and Yuhong Yin and the others also showed no joy on their faces. Wang Lin's ancient and present world only suppressed Fong Ting's power of poisonous ghost again, but could not change the essence of the problem. Fong Ting had a smile on her face, but her eyes showed the same sadness as Yang Qing's. She looked up at Yang Qing and said, "It turns out that I am already dead." Fong Ting did not wake up after exhausting her power. At the same time, because of the special power of Wang Lin's ancient and present world, Fong Ting retained the memory of this change. Yang Qing walked towards her and said, "Ting Ting." Fong Ting took a step back and shook her head, signaling Yang Qing to stop. She said with a smile, "It turns out that I was still dead at that time." Yang Qing felt sad, and she could no longer suppress the despair and sadness in her eyes. "Just now, those seniors said that I killed many people. Is it true?" Fong Ting looked up at the sky, and her eyes lost focus. Her body trembled slightly, as if she felt endless fear. The huge sense of guilt made her breathless. Yang Qing remained silent and did not answer. Fong Ting shook her head gently and said, "I think it should be true. This time, I finally remember what I was thinking when I became like that. Manic, painful, bloodthirsty, and desperate. It seemed that only by killing others could she relieve the pain in her spirit." Yu Hongyin came to their side, and he said in a low voice with a gloomy face, "You didn't have any consciousness before. It's not your fault, but the person who refined you into a poisonous ghost." Fong Ting smiled gently. Her smile was peaceful, but the sadness in her eyes was even more intense. I also want to comfort myself like this, but every time I think about the thousands of people that I killed with my own hands, I feel like I can't breathe. Whether I was willing or not, I did it. She looked down at her pure white hands and at her spotless white clothes. There's too much blood on my body. Yes, there's indeed a lot. At this moment, a laugh suddenly sounded between heaven and earth. Everyone looked at Wang Lin in shock. Wang Lin's face was cold, and he held a jade talisman in his hand. I just found this from Miss Fong's spirit. A man's laughter came from the jade talisman. Yang. Qing, right? All right, the problem is very simple now. On one side, there are thousands of souls that died unjustly, and on the other side, there's your lover that you think about day and night. How will you choose? Let me give you a hint. The cities that she massacred were not just 4, but 9. It's just that there are still 5 that you haven't discovered. The cultivators that died in her hands were not only people from the reincarnation sect. Reincarnation sect doesn't have a good relationship with you, so you can ignore it. But what if people from a Qin dynasty, Celeritas, Sword Sect, and Wilderness Sword Sect are added in? Their relationship with you isn't bad, right? When they demand the murderer from you, fellow Taoist Yang Qing, will you hand him over or not? Chapter 809. All right, fellow cultivator Yang Qingyang, what will you choose next? But the moment this deep laughter rang out, Yu Hongyin, Kong Nanhua, and Zhao Huan were dumbfounded as if struck by lightning. And Fong Ting's body trembled, infinite fear rising in her heart. Yu Hongyin looked at the jade talisman in Wang Lin's hand, pausing between each word, squeezing out a name from between his teeth. Zhang. Lai. Kong Nanhua's face turned green, and Zhao Huan's face revealed an expression of hate and fear. A scene once again appeared in the depths of their minds. In the boundless blue sea of fire, numerous members of the Society of the Strong Gale wailed incessantly, being engulfed by the blue fire. In the fire, a tall black-clothed man looked at them with a smile. Laughter rang out from the jade talisman. Yo, Hongyin, long time no see. I have to congratulate you on forming Yuanying. And Nanhua, you've also achieved the Dharma of heaven and earth. Congratulations. That's right, there's also little Huan, he's also grown up. Zhang Lai's voice was very calm, as if he was greeting an old friend that he hadn't seen for a long time, chatting idly, as if he was completely unaware of the monstrous hatred and anger of Yu Hongyin and the others. Kong Nanhua let out a long breath. Zhang Lai, it's been a long time. Zhang Lai smiled. Yeah, long time no see. You're still the same as always. Kong Nanhua and Yu Hongyin's brother Yu Hongfeng are close friends. Back then, Yu Hongfeng entrusted him with the task of helping the Society of the Strong Gale before his death. Even though his friendship with Zhang Lai, who was the other leader of the Society of the Strong Gale at that time, can't be said to be very deep, they are still familiar. Kong Nanhua said in a deep voice, You still view human life as worthless. Miss Fong became like this because of you. The tens of thousands of souls in the 9 cities also died in vain because of you. Do you think it has nothing to do with you because you didn't do it yourself? The butcher's knife stained with blood, or the butcher holding the butcher's knife? Just who is the main culprit? Zhang Lai chuckled and said, Hey, I didn't give her any orders. I just let her out. I didn't teach her what to do. Speaking of which, I just let her regain her freedom. You're the one who turned Ting Ting into a poison ghost. Yang Qing hugged the slightly trembling Fong Ting, unable to restrain her anger. Zhang Lai smiled and said, If I didn't refine her into a poisonous ghost, she would have died back then, under the burning of the Xidagarba true flame. Her physical body was completely destroyed, and half of her soul was damaged. If you want her to live, just refining her into a spirit ghost won't work. You have to infuse poison into her to barely maintain her ghost body. Or do you actually want her to die at that time? If that was the case, how could the two of you have reunited today? You've always wanted to see the one you love, right? Yang Qing gritted her teeth. If it wasn't for you, how would Ting Ting die? How could the cloudy water cave be destroyed? Zhang Lai smiled nonchalantly. You're right. If that's the case, it does seem like the source of the problem is me, but but are you going to explain it to the people of the Qin dynasty and the wilderness sword sect like this? Zhang Lai let out a low laugh from his throat. Do you think that if you explain it to them like this, they will completely let go of this Miss Fong? Even if they believe what you said and even come to kill me together, when this Miss Fong appears in front of them again, what do you think they will think? Will they pretend that nothing has happened? If something has a crack, it can be mended with some divine sense and Dharma power. But if there is a crack in the heart, can it be mended? Even if it doesn't break out for a while, it will still take root in the heart. With a little rain, it will immediately grow into a towering tree. What's more, do you think that if Fong Ting doesn't die, the ghosts in the 9 cities will rest in peace because of this? Yang Qing clenched her fists and looked like she was struggling. The laughter gradually disappeared, and Zhang Lai's voice became a little hoarse. Fellow Yang Qingyang, if I'm not wrong, in your heart, your sect, Xianmen Tianzong, is extremely important to you, right? There are many pro-disciples under the master of Xianmen's sect. Compared to them, you are not too eye-catching. You are also a genius, but compared to your dazzling senior and junior brothers, you seem mediocre. Because of this, with your character, you will be even more cautious. You are afraid of tarnishing your master's name and tarnishing Xianmen Tianzong's name. I really believe that if the situation calls for it for your sect, you will not hesitate to sacrifice your own life. In your heart, the glory of your sect is higher than your own life. Protecting the glory of your sect is the highest principle and belief in your heart. If you must find something that is barely equivalent, then I'm afraid it is this Miss Fong, the person you love the most. Similarly, for her safety, you can also sacrifice your own life. Zhang Lai's tone was a little ethereal. So now, on one side is your long-lost lover, and on the other side is your most noble belief and persistence. What will you choose? Protect your lover, but because of this, your sect will be tarnished for slaughtering mortals and cause a rift between your sect and your allies? Or will you put family before righteousness? Yang Qing's eyes were red. Zhang Lai, you... Zhang Lai interrupted him and said in a tone so calm that it was almost numb, actually, it is very easy for you to discover that the belief and persistence that you thought was unshakable before is worthless. The next moment, Zhang Lai's tone became relaxed again. With a hint of a smile, he said, "Oh, that's right. In order to make it easier for you to choose, fellow Yang Qing, I will say a few more words. Miss Fong's death and the destruction of your sect's cloudy water cave were indeed caused by me. However, those were only done in passing. My main goal was the lunar true water on you." Yang Qing's breathing suddenly stopped. Zhang Lai said with a smile, "That's right. If it wasn't to find you, I wouldn't have gone to the cloudy water cave. However, I later discovered that Miss Fong also had the lunar true water on her, so I didn't bother looking for you. Perhaps you feel that Miss Fong's current state is worse than death. Why don't you just grant her wish?" Wrong. You can't do anything. Your respected master, the master of the celestial sect of wonders, is powerful and has a high cultivation. He might have a way. At least I have a way. Since there is a way, there is no need to despair, right? Zhang Lai laughed loudly. "However, I don't know if you will give Miss Fong this chance." Bang! Wang Lin suddenly crushed the jade talisman in his hand. Then he made a hand sign with his other hand. A ball of purple light surged out and wrapped around the jade talisman fragment. Lead. Wang Lin's hand sign changed. The purple light wrapped around the jade talisman fragment and turned into a streak of purple light, flying into the distant sky. Wang Lin looked at Yang Qing. It will take some time to lock onto his position. That's why we let him talk nonsense for so long. Now let's go and scrape him out. After saying that, Wang Lin swept his transcendence energy and brought everyone to break through the void. They followed the direction of the purple light and chased after it. Yang Qing hugged Fong Ting tightly. He pursed his lips, and his eyes were filled with pain. Fong Ting's face was pale. She raised her head and looked at Yang Qing. She said softly, "I'm already very satisfied to be able to see you again. Actually, the price of this reunion is already too great. I have harmed many people. I can't pretend that nothing has happened." She smiled. "Senior brother Yang, let's stop here. The heavens have already treated me well." Yang Qing closed his eyes. He was expressionless and silent. However, Fong Ting, who was close to him, could feel that his body was trembling slightly. "We're here." Wang Lin's voice suddenly came into their ears. Everyone broke through the void and landed in a forest. Inside the forest, on a small hill, stood a tall, young man. He was dressed in black, and his face was masculine and handsome. As soon as Wang Lin broke through the void, the young man sensed it. The blood and qi in his body suddenly erupted like the sun. He soared into the sky and broke through the void to leave. Wang Lin snorted coldly. "Where do you think you're going?" The power of the Yellow Springs Death Realm spread out and directly corroded the surrounding space. It turned into a dark yellow space like the Nine Hells. With Wang Lin's current cultivation, his Yellow Springs Death Realm could directly merge with the real world. He could turn an area of several thousand li into his home field. The black-clothed man smiled and flipped his palm. His palm turned crimson, and the intense smell of lava and sulfur spread out. He struck out with his palm, and the powerful and vigorous martial qi and blood forced back the power of nirvana of the Yellow Springs Death Realm. The place where the black-clothed man was seemed to become a hell of fire and lava. It occupied more than a third of Wang Lin's Yellow Springs Death Realm and confronted the remaining Dark Yellow Springs Death Realm. Wang Lin, the third disciple of the Mystic Gate's master, indeed lives up to his reputation. Rumor has it that in Ing Ocean, the first disciple of the Mystic Gate's master, Xiao Yin, killed the number one genius of Great Zhou's younger generation, Marquis Jing Huan, who had several Dharma treasures. The second disciple, Zhu Yi, defeated Xiao Qingcheng, an essence soul cultivator from East Heaven Gate. The black-clothed man's lips moved and revealed a smile. "Now it seems that your divine abilities and dharmic powers are not inferior." Wang Lin looked at him expressionlessly and turned to look at Yu Hongyan, Kong Nanhua, and Yang Qing. "He has already proven his essence soul Dao. It'll be dangerous for you to fight him. I'm going to overstep my authority." Yu Hongyan stared at Zhang Lai. There seemed to be fire burning in his eyes. His red eyebrows were like two thin swords dripping blood. "Zhang Lai, why? Just why?" The black-clothed Zhang Lai looked at Yu Hongyan. After his gaze froze slightly for a moment, it returned to normal. He smiled carelessly. "Thinking about it, you've had a lot of doubts these years. Doubts about why I massacred my compatriots of the Society of the Strong Gale. Doubts about why I've reached this step today. Thinking about it, you've hated me to the bone most of the time these years. But because of the doubts in your heart, sometimes you'll try to think, did I have some unspeakable difficulties back then? Was I forced by someone?" The fury in Yu Hongyan's eyes almost solidified. "Before today, I might have had these doubts. But after seeing everything that happened today, I only see a deranged, vicious, and ruthless traitor. So why? Why did you become like this? Or is it that you've always been like this, that we were blind and never saw you clearly?" Chapter 810. Yu Hongyan stared fixedly at Zhang Lai, staring at this man who left her with an unforgettable memory. This man was once her master, teaching her skills and techniques, helping her grow. After the destruction of the Snow Gale Kingdom, her elder brother Yu Hongfeng and Zhang Lai were the people closest to her. After Yu Hongfeng's death, the man in front of her became her spiritual pillar. He was both the person who taught her and her lover. During those difficult times when they were being hunted by the Great Zhou dynasty, Zhang Lai protected them time and time again, moving from place to place, leading them to fight against the Great Zhou dynasty for the sake of their homeland. During those days, Zhang Lai was like the sun, dispelling the darkness for the survivors of Snow Gale country. He was like the pillar of a house, supporting a place to stay for the people of Snowgale Country who cherished their homeland and were unwilling to submit to the Great Joe. But it was also this person who killed one compatriot after another, bathing the entire society of the Strong Gale in blood. The anger in Yu Hongyin's eyes gradually cooled down, becoming ice-cold. At this moment, she felt as if she had never known this black-clothed man in front of her who she once thought she was very familiar with. This feeling was unprecedentedly strong. Cowardly and incompetent people, there is no use in keeping you. I will use your flesh and blood to pay tribute to my Snowgale Country. Yu Hongyin said coldly. These were your original words back then, but looking at it now, it was just an excuse. Zhang Lai looked at Yu Hongyin, then looked at the silent Kong Nanhua, then looked at Zhao Huan, who was looking at him with a gaze filled with hatred and fear. It is not that you are blind. It is that I myself have never seen myself clearly before. Zhang Lai faintly smiled, raising his head to look at the sky, as if immersed in his memories. The me back then also thought that I should be a calm and capable, brave and fearless leader. I once firmly believed that no matter how dark the road ahead is, we will eventually welcome the day when our country is restored. We will eventually welcome the day when the great Zhou dynasty pays with blood. Before that, I will protect my compatriots until the last drop of blood. I once firmly believed in this. Zhang Lai lowered his head, lightly laughing. You are right. Those words back then were indeed an excuse. The cowardly and incompetent people are not you. It's me. He raised his head and smiled at Yu Hongyan. He said calmly, Hongyan, do you know? In those days when I was commanding the Order of the Strong Gale to resist the arrest of the great Zhou dynasty, there was something that gradually grew in the bottom of my heart, becoming stronger and stronger, until in the end it swallowed up my entire soul, making me feel its existence at all times, its activity. Tired? Hardship? Annoyed? None of them. Zhang Lai said silently. It's fear, a fear that makes life hopeless. The great Zhou dynasty is too powerful, and the enemy is too powerful. To them, we are just a few fleas, completely insignificant. To restore the country, to make the great Zhou dynasty pay with blood is too difficult. It's so difficult that I can't see any hope. Yes, I'm afraid, I'm in despair. But I can't tell anyone, I can't reveal anything. Because I'm the leader of the Order of the Strong Gale, I have to protect everyone. Everyone is looking at me, relying on me. Even though I'm not from the imperial family of Snowgale, my father, grandfather, uncle, elder brother, my entire family of heroes, all died in battle when resisting the invasion of the great Zhou dynasty. Anyone can admit defeat, but I can't. Zhang Lai closed his eyes, saying indifferently, but I'm really afraid, so afraid that I can't breathe. But I still have to persevere, carry the safety and trust of thousands of people on my back, and continue on. Gradually, I started to feel tired. Thoughts started to continuously appear in my mind. If only I didn't have to be responsible for so many people. If only I didn't have to be so tired. If only I didn't have to fight against the great Zhou dynasty. Zhang Lai opened his eyes, his gaze as calm as water, looking at Yu Hongyan, Kong Nanhua, and Zhao Huan. From the first time these thoughts appeared, I continuously told myself that this is wrong, that I shouldn't think like that. But these thoughts still continuously appeared, and they became more and more frequent. Correspondingly, the fear in my heart also increased with each passing day, becoming more and more intense, until all of this reached its peak. A thought that even I at the time felt terrifying appeared in my heart. Zhang Lai said slowly, those annoying burdens, I really want to kill them all. The corners of Zhang Lai's mouth twitched, smiling. That's right, it's that time when I formed Yuanying in order to pass the void lightning tribulation. I mistakenly entered a space that sped up time and even obtained some fortune. Afterwards, I formed Yuanying and even cultivated to the middle stage of Yuanying. But at that time, my state of mind was completely out of balance. Many thoughts came one after another, messing up my mind. The great Zhou dynasty had so many Yuanying cultivators like me, so many primordial soul cultivators, so many magical treasures, Such a powerful, divine, martial, immortal extermination formation. Ha! At that time, we didn't even know that the Great Zhou dynasty had such a powerful creation magical treasure. From this, it could be seen how insignificant we were. Zhang Lai's tone was calm, as if he was talking about something that had nothing to do with him. I cultivated painstakingly. So what if I formed Yuanying? So what if I cultivated to the heavenly laws embodiment technique? In fact, even if I formed the primordial soul, so what? My state of mind was completely messed up. I thought I had gone mad. Ha ha! Zhang Lai let out a deep laugh. You all know what happened next. After that, you asked me if I regretted it? I often felt a tinge of regret, but more than that, I felt relaxed and carefree. It was as if I had broken the shackles of many years. It was truly carefree and relaxed like never before. I strongly felt that I no longer had to bear any responsibilities, no longer had to force myself to do things that I didn't want to do. I could only live for myself and do whatever I wanted. What a happy thing it was. Doing whatever I wanted, this is me. I finally saw clearly that this is the real me. Not only did you not see it clearly, even I myself did not see it clearly in the past. Zhang Lai shook his head. After that, I often thought about it. Actually, if I really wanted to break free from the shackles of the past, I only needed to leave. I didn't need to kill anyone, but at that time, I really lost control of myself. The killing intent in my heart was completely uncontrollable. He looked at Yu Hongyan and the others, a smile appearing on his face again. His tone was calm, but there was a tinge of numbness hidden in it. After that, I finally realized that actually the unshakable beliefs and perseverance of a person in the past might not be what they really want. At some point, they will suddenly realize what is the most important to them, and the things that they valued in the past are actually not worth a single cent. Yu Hongyan looked at Zhang Lai. The anger in her eyes had already disappeared. Only endless sorrow. Zhang Lai, you have really changed so much that I don't recognize you anymore. If it was just insidious, extreme, and unscrupulous, Yu Hongyan would at most feel resentment. But now, she felt extreme sorrow for herself and for the people who had died. The figure that everyone had followed in the past seemed to have turned into a mocking smile. All the trust, hard work, and courage in the past had become a joke. Kong Nanhua looked at Zhang Lai and shook his head. Zhang Lai, it is not that you have recognized yourself, but that your personality has been distorted and your willpower has been shaken. He frowned slightly. But in such a situation, how can you achieve primordial soul? Not to mention primordial soul, it is difficult for you to even break through to the late Yuanying embodiment of heaven and earth. What else happened to you? I have said so much just now, but it is all in the past. The current me is naturally different from the past. Zhang Lai smiled slightly. Whatever you say, in short, I feel that the way I am now is not bad. I am very satisfied with myself, living freely and having fun. If I can get rid of a few more enemies, that will be even better. Yu Hongyan stared at him, her gaze turning cold again. Zhang Lai, no matter what, you must repay the blood debt you owe. Wang Lin said coldly, we have reminisced for long enough. If you have anything to say, we can talk about it when we return to Yujing Mountain. As he spoke, a shadow flashed above his head, and a huge half-black, half-white door appeared in a flash. The left half of the door was as black as ink, and there were many relief sculptures on the door, but they were daunting, like the Yiksha, Yama, hungry ghosts, mountains of knives, and seas of fire. It was like hell. The right half of the door was as white as jade, and there were also many sculptures on the door, but they were flowers, mountains, rivers, and thousands of lives, appearing full of vitality, like a lively world. The door opened, and the true appearance of a world that alternated between hell for the dead and the world of the living was revealed. Wang Lin's four symbols realm magical power, one of the four worlds, the realm of life and death. The world that constantly alternated between the world of the living and hell descended on Zhang Lai, wanting to suck him in. Zhang Lai smiled, and his hand grabbed at the void beside him, pulling out a green and black halberd. The violent power and piercingly cold, murderous aura caused everyone to be shocked. This was obviously a magic treasure, and it exuded an extremely terrifying power. Destruction, destruction, destruction. A destructive power that wanted to destroy everything. To destroy everything. Zhang Lai waved the halberd, and the martial qi and blood that had reached the primordial soul stage erupted, and the halberd pierced towards Wang Lin's realm of life and death. The violent power seemed to be able to destroy hell and the world of the living. The spirit nurturing stage magic treasure in his hand, under the control of his martial will, was not inferior to a primordial soul adept in the slightest. When the two joined forces, the destructive power was shockingly terrifying, and it fully displayed the powerful explosive power of a martial adept. Wang Lin's expression was indifferent, and his eyes were cold. He shouted in a low voice, "Ha!" The shadow above his head flickered, and it turned into a giant with 4 faces and 8 arms standing in the void. The Yellow Springs Road extended below him, and the Wangchuan River silently flowed. A dark stone bridge was erected above the river, and the giant stepped on the stone bridge. Its body was shrouded in black fog, and white light flashed from time to time. And above the giant's head was a huge and magnificent palace. But this palace itself was completely dark. Above the palace, there were 3 layers of light and shadow illusions that seemed like stairs, like a pagoda. Each layer of light and shadow illusions was connected by a half-black and half-white door. As soon as this giant appeared, the magical power of Wang Lin's realm of life and death immediately surged. The law of heaven and earth, Wang Lin's universal dharma. Chapter 811. As soon as Wang Lin's heaven and earth form appeared, a majestic force immediately shook the world. The world of life and death continued to expand, fusing with the power of the netherworld realm of destruction and eroding the real world, turning the surrounding thousands of miles into a world where the human world and hell alternated. Zhang Lai raised his eyebrows slightly. Impressive indeed. The dark green halberd in his hand suddenly exuded an extremely terrifying aura, as if it contained endless viciousness, sin, greed, and evil. A thick, and ink-like black liquid gushed out from the body of the halberd. From time to time, a twisted and wailing ghost face emerged from the black liquid. It was either seductive or ferocious, moaning or growling, baring its teeth or sticking out its tongue. The numerous malicious ghosts emitted an endless amount of evil and sinister energy. With a deafening ghostly howl, they charged viciously towards Wang Lin. Ferocious demon rush. After Zhang Lai refined the power of tens of thousands of vengeful spirits, he fused it with his martial arts and formed this extremely powerful martial arts mystique. The qi and blood of martial artists were masculine, which was the nemesis of evil ghosts. Their blood was like the scorching sun, making it difficult for ghosts and gods to approach. However, Zhang Lai had actually combined martial arts with the power of evil ghosts and resentful spirits to create this strange and overbearing magical power. Wang Lin's expression remained unchanged. The scene in the life and death world changed and turned into a boundless hell. In that hell, a dim yellow river suddenly appeared. The river surged and surged, but there was not the slightest sound of water. Instead, there was a deathly silence, which made people click their tongues in wonder. The murky yellow water was filled with a concept of power that could purify and annihilate all things. It was the river of forgetfulness refined from the Yellow Springs true water. When Wang Lin used the river of forgetfulness in the late stage of the golden elixir, even the dharma form of an ordinary late-stage yuanying cultivator could not withstand it. Now that he was in the late-stage yuanying, this already vicious spell became even more powerful. The Yellow Springs true water was especially good at purifying the soul. At this moment, Zhang Lai's ferocious ghost burst spear had met its nemesis against Wang Lin's river of forgetfulness. One after another, The evil ghosts were purified by the yellow spring true water. Their twisted and wailing faces gradually became peaceful again. The inky black liquid on the halberd was being washed away by the yellow spring true water and kept disappearing. Zhonglai let out a low growl. With a shake of his halberd, an explosion rang out in the void, and the space directly shattered. The skies seemed to have opened up, and an extremely ferocious star shone brightly, as if it would bring endless calamities and destruction to the human world. Wang Lin's eyes flashed. Alcade, this dark green halberd of Zhonglai's was called the Army Destroyer Monarch Halberd. Impressively, it was refined by drawing upon the star energy of the Army Destroyer star in the sky, and it possessed extremely destructive power. At this moment, he shook the body of his halberd. His aura was so strong that even Wang Lin's river of forgetfulness could not hold him back. But Wang Lin's finger tapped lightly, and the four symbols world magic began to operate. Deep within the life and death world, another black and white door opened. The world inside contained mysterious concepts. Since ancient times, many changes had occurred. The past could not be changed, but the present could be grasped with all one's heart. The future was filled with countless possibilities. In an instant, the life and death world had turned into the ancient and present world. The door to the ancient and present world suddenly closed, and the time between heaven and earth seemed to flow backwards. At the same time, a large purple flag that flashed with seven-colored light appeared behind Wang Lin. Light flowed on the surface of the flag, and the figures of two men appeared. One of the middle-aged men had ice-blue eyes. After he appeared, an endless amount of Xianming true water appeared around his body, as if there was no end to it. The vast amount of Xianming true water was compressed and concentrated, causing the originally ice-blue true water to gradually turn black. Endless coldness seeped out of it, and there was also an ancient and desolate aura, as if it had existed for countless years and was immortal. The former head of the Yu clan, Xianming Dao Lord, Yushin Tao. The other person was also a middle-aged man. He was not tall, and he wore a silk scarf on his head. He was dressed in a white robe, and he looked like a Confucian scholar. Suddenly, snow-white crystals appeared around his body. These crystals were pulsating like flames. The crystals were clearly formed from ice and snow, but at this moment, the ice and snow danced in the air like a raging fire, and they even emitted a blazing heat. This was the Sky Pool sect's mystique, Ice Flame. The former head of the Sky Pool sect, Xianming Dao Lord, Chao Wei. When Zhonglai saw Yushin Tao and Chao Wei, his expression turned solemn. His gaze shifted to the Xintian God sealing flag, and he exclaimed, "Good treasure, it's really a good treasure." Yushin Tao and Chao Wei were expressionless. Their essence souls were sealed by the Xintian God sealing flag. Although their thoughts and memories were normal, and even their normal cultivation was not affected, they were imprisoned by the Dharma treasure. They had to obey the orders of the Dharma treasure's owner, Wang Lin. Wang Lin released them to fight against the enemy, and they could unleash their full strength. They were equivalent to two experts in the essence soul realm. Under the effect of the Xintian God sealing flag, they could not slack off even if they wanted to, and they had to give it their all. In the past, when Wang Lin had just formed his nascent soul, he could only release one imprisoned essence soul to fight with this treasure. Now that he was in the late Yuanying realm, he could control more than one imprisoned person by controlling the Xintian God sealing flag. When the two essence soul realm experts attacked, Zhonglai and the Army Destroyer King Halberd were immediately trapped again. Yushin Tao made a seal with one hand and slapped it towards Zhonglai. In the center of his palm, there was a black hole, and endless cold air seemed to freeze the world, returning everything to the Ice Age. One of the most powerful mystiques derived from the Yu family's Xianming art, the Cambrian God sealing seal. Chao Wei made a strange hand seal, and the ice flame in front of him turned into a white mist covering Zhonglai. However, Zhonglai faced the white mist that seemed to be moving slowly, but he was even more cautious than he was against Yushin Tao's Cambrian God sealing seal. The secret mystique of the Tianchi sect, the burning ice flame technique. This technique could turn the opponent's magic power into its own fuel and continuously increase the power of its own fire. The stronger the opponent's magic power was, the more powerful the burning ice flame technique would be. The opponent strengthened his magic power to resist the burning ice flame technique, but the result was like adding firewood to the fire, increasing the power of the burning ice flame technique and sending all his magic power to the enemy. Martial cultivators usually integrated their magic power into their strong body, and once they came into contact with the ice mist, it was equivalent to drawing fire to their body, so they were most afraid of the burning ice flame technique. Zhang Lai took a deep breath, and the Earth Matrix Purgatory Palm in his left hand clashed with Yu Xintao's Cambrian God Sealing Seal. At the same time, he held the Army Destroyer King halberd in his right hand and drew a mysterious path in the air. Wherever the halberd passed, it left a mark in the void, and the dark green mark shone brightly, soft and strong. Yang Qing's eyes narrowed. Lunar true water. Zhang Lai's expression was calm, and the originally violent halberd became as soft as water in his hand, unusually soft and agile. This was the 13 lunar halberds that he had comprehended after combining the power of the lunar true water with his own martial path. It was the complete opposite of his original martial path of extreme yang and extreme yang, but it was equally amazing. The martial path was the opposite of hardness and softness, and Zhang Lai had simultaneously cultivated the two types of power to the extreme of the first tier of the primordial soul realm. Zhang Lai's 13 lunar halberds were unleashed, and the endless mysteries of the martial path and the lunar true water complemented each other. Not only did it seal off the ice mist formed by Chao Wei's burning ice flame technique, but also blocked Wang Lin's mystique of the river of forgetfulness. Wang Lin thought to himself, this person's mystique is probably at the top level among the first tier of the primordial soul realm adepts. He had heard Zhu Yi, Li Yuanfang, and the others describe the various details of the battle between Zhu Yi and Shao Qingchang in detail. At this moment, he could roughly estimate that Zhang Lai's combat ability was no weaker than that of Shao Qingchang, whom Zhu Yi had met in Yinghai, and he might even be slightly stronger. In terms of combat experience and combat awareness, Zhang Lai was definitely superior. Although this was what he thought, Wang Lin's actions were not slow at all. He stared coldly at Zhang Lai, and the pitch-black bridge of forgetfulness had already appeared beneath his feet. It descended upon the river of forgetfulness, lifted up by the surging netherworld true water, and smashed fiercely towards Zhang Lai. Zhang Lai wielded the halberd with both hands and struck 13 times in the void, forming 13 crisscrossing dark green light webs that blocked Wang Lin's bridge of forgetfulness by a hair's breadth. But Wang Lin's bridge of forgetfulness immediately followed up with another attack. Luckily, I was prepared. Otherwise, things would have been far from good today. Zhang Lai sighed. Facing the encirclement of Wang Lin, Chao Wei, and Yu Xintao, he only defended and did not attack. He focused on defending and withstood the storm-like attacks with great difficulty. At this moment, a token hanging on his waist suddenly lit up with rays of light. The light patterns expanded and rapidly turned into a gigantic array. The power of the gigantic array suddenly erupted, tearing a gigantic crack in the void. The space-time turbulence surged within. It was actually a void battlefield. Zhang Lai was swept into the battlefield by the crack. His martial arts power also erupted completely as he fled rapidly. Wang Lin's gaze was cold. With a single thought, the third demon gate appeared in the depths of the ancient and present world. This demon gate was also half black and half white. The left side was as black as ink, and the relief on it was exaggerated and distorted, giving off an absurd, exaggerated, and fake feeling. As for the right side, it was as white as jade. The style of the relief on the gate was simple but not crude. Instead, it gave off a natural feeling of simplicity and authenticity. The third realm of Wang Lin's four symbols realm method, the realm of truth and illusion. The gate suddenly opened, and the illusory world interfered with the real world. It directly locked Zhang Lai and the crack in the void battlefield together. In the next moment, the gate closed again. As the light flashed, the crack in the void battlefield also disappeared. Zhang Lai looked around in shock. He realized that although he had successfully teleported a great distance, he was still in the boundless world. The crack in the void battlefield that had opened up just now was like an illusion that had never existed. It was just an illusion, turning the real into the fake. Zhang Lai looked at Wang Lin. You actually managed to change the real from the fake to the real to such an extent. That person with double pupils, Shi Tianyi, in the past, if he had advanced to the later stage of yuanying like you, with his double pupils, I'm afraid he wouldn't be much stronger than you, right? Wang Lin looked at him coldly and did not reply. He took a step forward, and the ferocious bridge of forgetfulness once again blasted toward Zhang Lai. Chapter 812. At this moment, Zhang Lai was empty-handed. The army vanquisher monarch halberd had disappeared. Just now, under the effects of the void tearing and Wang Lin's true and false world, the space between heaven and earth had been completely distorted. He didn't know where his army vanquisher monarch halberd had been swept to. Facing Wang Lin's bridge of helplessness, Zhang Lai spread out his palms. His martial Dao fist intent almost condensed into a solid form, turning into a phantom. Under the sky, lava erupted and overflowed in all directions. It was like the end of the world. An aura of great disaster, great destruction, and great suffering came from it. Lava splashed everywhere. It was a terrifying hell full of flowing fire. The boundless green fire spread out, and the fire seemed to have no end. The sky was dye green, one of the 7 great true fires, Ksitigarbha, true flame. This was the true meaning of Zhang Lai's Ksitigarbha, purgatory palm, pushed to the extreme, throwing opponents who dared to be his enemy into a hell full of Ksitigarbha true flame. They would suffer endless torture, never to be reincarnated. The iron palm that rolled up the boundless Ksitigarbha true flame collided with Wang Lin's bridge of helplessness that carried the Yellow Springs true water. The tall Dharma idol above Wang Lin's head let out a silent cry. The cold and violent power made it so that even without the help of magic treasures, he didn't fear Zhang Lai, who was at the primordial spirit realm, at all. His eyes were cold as he stared at Zhang Lai. Behind him, the mysterious sky god ceiling flag fluttered. Chao Wei's primordial spirit appeared again. This time, he directly revealed his primordial spirit incarnation. It turned into a blue sun that flashed with cold light. It was dazzling, but it made people shudder. Boundless icy mist spread out again. It was still the ice essence burning flame technique that was most targeted at martial Dao experts. This time, Chao Wei revealed his primordial spirit incarnation, further increasing the power of this technique, and attacked Zhang Lai. Although it couldn't burn Ksitigarbha true flame, it also continuously wore down Zhang Lai's Ksitigarbha purgatory palm martial Dao fist intent. The red hell was on the verge of collapse. Zhang Lai's body was immediately stained with white, icy mist. In an instant, it turned into a fire and spread. At the same time, Wang Lin's bridge of helplessness pressed down once again. Zhang Lai let out a low roar and shook his arm. Using his fist as a spear, his fist seemed to have transformed into the tip of a great spear. With a forceful shake in the air, the raging fire and icy mist on his body dispersed. At the same time, he lightly tapped on Wang Lin's bridge of helplessness. It was as if a great spear was bending under a huge force. Zhang Lai's arm was also violently bent, forming a strange arc. In the next moment, he suddenly stretched out his arm and flicked it forcefully. Relying on this force, his body shifted slightly and barely avoided Wang Lin's bridge of helplessness. This move displayed the exquisite firmness and softness of martial arts without restraint. However, Wang Lin's bridge of helplessness was truly ferocious. After Zhang Lai's move, Dark red beads of blood seeped out from every pore on his arm. The martial body of a primordial divinity expert, which had been tempered hundreds and thousands of times, had countless tiny blood vessels in this arm shattered. His muscles, bones, and skin were twisted and torn. After escaping with one move, Zhang Lai exerted force in his feet and prepared to escape. Wang Lin was expressionless. As the light and shadow above his head flashed, the true and false world of the Four Symbols Realm technique appeared once again, displaying its mysterious power. The illusory world merged with the heaven and earth within a radius of thousands of miles, interfering with the real world. Immediately after, Zhang Lai discovered that the bridge of helplessness that he had clearly dodged just now had strangely crashed into him. The Wangchuan River's water slammed into the bridge, and it actually emitted a roar that seemed to have a life of its own. It was deep, ancient, and at the same time, extremely terrifying. The violent and terrifying power that crushed everything struck Zhang Lai's chest. Bang, 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 kacha, kacha, kacha. The sound of a bowstring snapping and the sound of steel shattering rang out continuously. This was the sound of Zhang Lai's muscles and bones being forcibly crushed by the bridge of helplessness. Other than turning the real into the fake, it can also turn the fake into the real. Zhang Lai finally understood. Originally, when the bridge of helplessness's attack missed and Zhang Lai dodged it, it was real. When the bridge of helplessness successfully struck him, it was fake. However, under the effects of Wang Lin's true and false world, black and white were mixed up, and the real and fake were reversed. The fake became real, causing the bridge of helplessness's attack to become real. Zhang Lai should have successfully dodged it, but it became a fake. It's a pity that I'm not proficient in the transformation between real and fake. Otherwise, I might not have been restrained by your divine power. Zhang Lai wanted to dodge, but he was locked in place by the bridge of helplessness's attack. He wanted to open his mouth to speak, but he directly spat out a mouthful of blood, which turned into clouds of blood mist in the air. His opponent was about to die, but Wang Lin frowned slightly. His eyes flickered, and his movements slowed down. At that moment, an old voice suddenly sounded. "Do you want to capture him alive?" "That won't do." As the voice sounded, an old man in black robes appeared in the void. His hair was white, and his face was thin. He was one of the Underworld Hall's 10 Yama Kings, the disobedient official king, Sikong Yu, a cultivator at the second tier of the Essence Soul Realm. He looked at Zhang Lai and said casually, "This person should have died a long time ago." As he spoke, he waved his hand, and an ink-like black mist of ghosts shot out. Black mist scatter into smoke. With the help of the demon Nightmare, spit out dark ink 1,000 ghost arrows kill. The black mist of ghosts instantly drifted and turned into thousands of hungry ghosts. They twisted and wailed, densely covering the sky. With a turn in the air, they immediately turned into thousands of vile ghost arrows, shooting towards Wang Lin and Zhang Lai. Zhang Lai laughed loudly. "Master you really know how to find an opportunity." As he laughed, the already heavily injured Zhang Lai was immediately riddled with holes by the torrential vile ghost arrows. Wang Lin was expressionless. With a grunt, the primordial spirit of Lord Xianming Yuxintao appeared. He transformed into a primordial spirit incarnation that looked like a black ice soul. He used the strongest defense ability of the Xianming art, the Xianming Shield, to block the many vile ghost arrows for Wang Lin. Yuxintao completely gave up on attacking and focused on defending. The Xianming Shield shook violently and cracks appeared. This was under the situation where Zhang Lai took more than half of the arrows. Wang Lin did not look at Sikong Yu. Instead, his gaze fell on Zhang Lai, whose eyes were wide open and whose body was mutilated. His gaze flickered, and a thoughtful emotion flashed in the depths of his eyes. Sikong Yu looked at Wang Lin. "The third disciple of the master of the Mystic Gate, Wang Lin, right? I am Sikong Yu, an elder of the 10,000 Ghosts sect." Wang Lin turned to look at him and said silently, 10,000 ghost sect. Sikong you? You came for that old ghost. Sikong Nan? Sikong you looked him in the eye and said honestly, half of it is for my brother, and the other half is for the underworld pearl. Wang Lin nodded with an indifferent expression. He did not say anything and directly waved the Shintian god sealing flag. Other than Chao Wei and Yu Xintao, even the primordial spirit incarnation of the former King Qingguang of the Underworld Hall was released. Through the Shintian god sealing flag, 3 primordial spirit incarnation realm experts were activated to battle. This was the limit of Wang Lin, who was in the late stage of yuanying. Sikong Yu shook his head. The personal disciples of the Master of the Mystic Gate are indeed extraordinary. Your senior brother, Zhu Yi, is in the late stage of yuanying like you. Both of you can defeat most of the first-tier primordial spirit realm experts. However, he can fight with the second-tier primordial spirit realm cultivators, but you can't. This is because he has more than one Dharma treasure of the incarnation realm. This flag of yours is different. To be honest, this is probably the most suitable treasure for cultivators who have yet to reach the primordial spirit realm. However, for you, who are in the late stage of yuanying, its effect is a little awkward. This is because the direct combat power of your flag is reflected in the imprisoned primordial spirit realm cultivators. The flag itself is actually of limited use. The corner of Sikong Yu's mouth twitched slightly, revealing a smile. Chao Wei and the rest are considered extraordinary among the first-tier primordial spirit realm cultivators. However, even if they join forces to deal with me, it's still not enough. As Sikong Yu spoke, he opened his hands and thousands of shrill ghost howls sounded. Rays of black light flowed and transformed into a seemingly real world, enveloping Wang Lin and isolating him from the space. Within the black light, the shrill cries of countless hungry ghosts sounded one after another. Wang Lin's expression did not change. He was completely unmoved by his words. He had already prepared his attack and was patiently looking for Sikong Yu's flaws. From the outside, it seemed as though a huge black ball of light had suddenly appeared between heaven and earth. It was like a black sun hanging in the sky, emitting a gloomy and cold light. In the void that was extremely far away from the black ball of light, a spot of brilliance suddenly flashed. As the brilliance flowed, a greenish-black halberd quietly appeared. The halberd passed through layers of void and landed on a hill. A person sat cross-legged on the top of the hill. He was dressed in a black outfit. It was Zhang Lai. However, at this moment, his face was pale and his aura was weak. He did not look like a martial arts expert who had reached the primordial spirit realm at all. Instead, he looked like a sick man with a frail physical body. However, with every breath he took, his strength was gradually recovering. The blazing yang qi and blood were also gradually recovering. Zhang Lai held a black stone that looked like a round mirror that had already shattered. He looked at the ball of light and sneered. Old Sikong, this time, you're the one who will die. He smiled weakly. Fortunately, I obtained this soul imprint mirror stone. Zhang Lai's soul imprint mirror stone had a similar effect to Lin Feng's heavenly sea golden bead. However, it had many more drawbacks. It could only be used once. At the same time, after the duplication, the original body would lose all of its strength. It was equivalent to transferring the original body's strength to the duplicate. After the duplicate died, or the spell was removed, the original body would regain its strength. However, it was not an instant recovery. Just as Zhang Lai was seizing the time to recover his original body's cultivation, he suddenly frowned. The army destroyer monarch halberd beside him also trembled. The void above the mountain shook and a white-robed youth appeared. He stared at Zhang Lai, who was on the top of the mountain, with a calm expression. It was Kong Nanhua. Zhang Lai smiled. Yo Nanhua, you're fast. It seems that you really want to kill me. Kong Nanhua's tone was calm, but everyone could hear the cold, killing intent in it. Zhang Lai, no matter what reason you had in the past, a debt of blood must be repaid with blood. Zhang Lai tilted his head slightly and smiled. Is that so? Before he finished speaking, the ground in the distance suddenly shook violently. In the next moment, a sky full of green flames spread out, instantly engulfing thousands of miles. Kong Nanhua frowned slightly. Formation? However, this formation was extremely far from the mountain and could not help Zhonglai now. Chapter 8:13. I wonder who triggered the array formation. Zhonglai looked into the distance and saw that in the boundless green sea of fire, there was a large amount of white silk dancing in the air. They were not destroyed in the fire, but instead merged with the vast Ksitigarbha true brilliance fire, making the Ksitigarbha true fire look a little strange. Kong Nanhua also looked at the place where the spell formation was located in the distance, and an ominous feeling gradually rose in her heart. Wang Lin transmitted his voice to us and told us that a black-robed old man who was familiar with you suddenly attacked and killed you, but your death is very strange. Perhaps you faked your death and hid nearby. Although you faked your death, your vitality should have been greatly damaged. From the looks of it, he was right. Zhonglai smiled and said, "So you split up to look for me?" Wang Lin's eyes are very sharp. I didn't expect him to see through me. Kong Nanhua's heart stirred, and she suddenly received a voice transmission from Yang Qing using her dermic powers. Immediately, her expression changed slightly. Other than herself and Yu Hongyan, Yang Qing and the rest were all trapped in the sea of fire array formation. Zhonglai smiled and said, "That's my scarlet ground god-extinguishing array. It uses the tyrannical blood 10,000 poisons technique to refine the Ksitigarbha true brilliance, turning it into a boundless sea of poisonous fire. When the array formation is spread out, the land is scarlet for thousands of miles, leaving nothing behind. If I were to host it personally, even an ordinary first-tier essence soul realm cultivator would not be able to escape. They would have to suffer the burning of the poisonous fire. Although I can't host it now, the array formation has already been activated. It's not something that a cultivator of the Yuanying or Golden Elixir period can withstand." Zhonglai looked at Kong Nanhua. "I want to catch all of you in one fell swoop. Who knew that you would split up?" He suddenly lowered his head, his throat rolling, and he laughed in a low voice. "However, this is just right. It couldn't be better. It's much more fun than I expected. If all of you are trapped in my array formation, you will be constantly attacked by the poisonous fire. Even if all of you work together, it will be difficult to escape. However, my array formation can only defend against internal attacks, not external attacks. If someone attacks from the inside, it will be destroyed. However," Zhonglai raised his head and smiled at Kong Nanhua. "Nanhua, look carefully. Because I just used a secret technique, I'm now in an extremely weak state. I've even completely lost the power that a primordial spirit cultivator should have. Although you have the army vanquishing Imperial Halberd to protect you, the current you has a real chance to threaten my life. However, I have the army destroyer Imperial Halberd. If you want to kill me, you will need to spend some time. I'm afraid that the people in the Scarlet Ground God-killing formation might not be able to wait for you to kill me before breaking the formation to save them. In fact, if you want to kill me, you will have to pay a price. It's hard to say if you will still have the strength to save them." He smiled as he looked at the ball of light in the distant sky. Wang Lin can escape to save them, but unfortunately, he's trapped by Sikong Yu's 10,000 ghosts nocturnal formation. Even if he has the ability to break out, he'll be isolated before my Scarlet Absolute God formation can be activated. Now that he's trapped in the void by the 10,000 ghosts nocturnal formation, he can't feel the activation of the Scarlet Absolute God formation. Naturally, he won't be able to save them. You don't have to think about using voice transmission to call for him. Without reaching the Essence Soul Realm, your magic power can't pass through the 1,000 Ghost formation. He can use voice transmission to communicate with you, but you won't be able to contact him." Zhonglai paused for a moment, as if he had received a voice transmission from someone else. Oh, Hongyan is also acting alone, but he didn't fall into the formation. Then, are Yang Qing and the rest in the formation now? Nanhua, You don't have to count on Hong Yen. She's also being held back by someone. Even if she receives the news, she won't be able to break out in a short amount of time. Zhang Lai clapped his hands and looked at Kong Nanhua. So, Nanhua, only you have the strength to save them. But don't blame me for not reminding you. Even though it takes time for my power to recover, it's very fast. After you save them, I'll recover at least 80%. At that time, I'll leave this place. If you want to kill me, you won't have the chance anymore. Kong Nanhua's pupils contracted slightly. Zhang Lai, what do you want? Zhang Lai laughed lightly. Nanhua, if I remember correctly, the most important belief for you is to keep your promise. You swear to keep your promise for your entire life. You don't make promises easily, but as long as you make a promise to someone, you will do your best to fulfill it. Even if you have to pay with your life, you won't hesitate. Back then, before Hong Feng died, you promised him that you would help me protect the society of the Strong Gale. I was also there at that time, Zhang Lai calmly said. After that, you sure enough kept your promise and fought against the great Zhou dynasty for us survivors of Snow Gale who originally had little to do with you. You clearly know that it's like hitting a rock with an egg, like a mantis trying to stop a chariot. You clearly know that staying with us is precarious, but you still gladly endure it. You never entered a sect, but right now you're serving as a protector in Xianmen Tianzong. For you, joining Xianmen Tianzong is a promise. You will definitely do your best for Xianmen Tianzong, isn't that right? Zhang Lai smiled. Then that's good. Now the problem is very simple. Kill me and avenge the entire society of the Strong Gale, or save the disciples of Xianmen Tianzong. Which one do you choose? He looked at Kong Nanhua and tilted his head. Don't think about letting me go this time. There will be plenty of chances to kill me in the future. This time I came to find you guys. If I can escape alive, as long as the master of the Xian Gate is still alive, I will definitely hide and not show my face for the rest of my life. I don't want to suffer his wrath. Believe me, before you guys couldn't find me. This time you still won't be able to find me. Unless Xianmen Tianzong can one day rule over the entire Tian Yuan world and command the heavens, no one will dare to disobey. But since ancient times, no one has been able to do it. Even the demon emperor of the primordial era was a bit lacking. For the time being, even if the master of the Xian Gate is as powerful as the heavens and can do this, but I wonder if you, Nanhua, can live to see that day. The affairs of the world are ever-changing. Even if one reached the primordial spirit, there are many who have fallen. Zhang Lai suddenly laughed, convulsing with laughter. That's right. I suddenly remembered something. He smiled at Kong Nanhua, asking, Nanhua, when you were young, did you stay for a long time in a small mortal mountain village? Let me see. It was about 70 years ago. 76 years, or 77 years. Kong Nanhua's pupils suddenly constricted. She stared at Zhang Lai, her body emitting an unprecedented strong, killing intent. How do you know? Could it be you? Zhang Lai ignored Kong Nanhua's anger, his eyes revealing a look of reminiscence. At that time, I wasn't that old. I was around 20 years old, right? I was also a foundation establishment cultivator. In the process of cultivation, I suddenly had signs of qi deviation. I was extremely irritable, and later, I accidentally entered that small mountain village and lost control of myself and killed many people. When I woke up, I was also filled with regret. I even felt fear and guilt. That matter has been a knot in my heart for a very long time. It almost affected my core formation, as well as my wind and fire calamity. Now that I think about it, it's a bit funny. However, that might have been the first time I revealed my true nature. Unfortunately, I didn't know at that time and was immersed in regret and shame. Zhang Lai looked at Kong Nanhua and smiled leisurely. Nanhua, that was also the first time I heard of your name. At that time, there was a little girl in the village who kept muttering your name before she died. She even had a bit of shallow qi condensation cultivation. Was she your disciple? Or was someone else? The anger on Kong Nanhua's face completely disappeared. Her gaze also became calm, as if there were no emotions. However, an extremely cold, killing intent spread out silently, causing people to feel suffocated. Zhang Lai smiled. How is it? Hearing this news makes it easier for me to help you make a choice, right? The smile on his face also gradually disappeared. His expression became calm, even calm to the point of numbness. That's why, Nanhua, I often say that a person's unshakable faith and persistence may not be what they truly want. At a certain moment, they will suddenly realize what is the most important to them, and the things that they previously valued are actually worthless. Seize the opportunity to kill me. Relieve your anger. Relieve your killing intent. Untie the knot in your heart from the past, and take revenge. Although it may not be able to make up for all your regrets, it can at least comfort the souls of the dead in heaven. Or do you persist in your faith all along? First fulfill your unfinished promise, and save Xianmen Tianzong's disciple. Nanhua, what do you plan to do? Zhang Lai raised his head and looked at the green sea of fire in the distance. A hint of a smile appeared at the corner of his mouth. Seeing a person personally destroy their past self is such an interesting thing. It's much more interesting than cultivating, practicing, and living a free and unfettered life. He turned his gaze to the other side and looked through the void. He could vaguely see a hole in the sky in the distance. Stars flickered in the universe, and an ominous star was especially dazzling, as if it had gathered all the killing intent in the world into its body. 7 Murders Star. Zhang Lai muttered to himself. The army destroyer Imperial halberd beside his hand suddenly trembled. In that direction, a purple light filled with monstrous killing intent, as if it wanted to slaughter all living beings, passed through the layers of void and rushed towards the scarlet ground god-extinguishing formation. But soon, a large drum rose in the sky. One side of the drum was black, and the other side was white. The next moment, the drum sounded, and waves of black and white ripples spread out, surrounding the murderous purple light. In the void, a red-haired girl dressed in purple armor glared at the black and white drum. It was Yu Hongyan. This black and white drum was an artifact called the Yin-Yang Soul Morning Drum. There were 3 cultivators below the drum, and they were looking at her with evil smiles. The 3 of them were all Yuanying late-stage cultivators. One of them was an old man, and his hands were in the shape of a heavenly king holding a pagoda. He placed his hands under the Yin-Yang Soul Morning Drum and lifted the black and white drum. As for the other 2 cultivators, one was dressed in white, and the other was dressed in black, like the black and white impermanence. One of them held a skull drumstick that was even thicker than them. They stood on both sides of the drum, and they beat the drum together. Yu Hongyan had the 7 Murders Star armor. Even if the 3 of them worked together to activate the Yin-Yang Soul Morning Drum, they wouldn't dare to say that they could win easily. However, the 3 of them didn't want to defeat Yu Hongyan. They just kept pestering her so that she couldn't escape and go to the scarlet ground god-extinguishing formation. The cultivator in black who beat the drum said with a smile, I heard that Xianmen Tianzong Yu Hongyan is a woman who doesn't lose to men, and she never retreated in a fight. Why are you in a hurry to escape today? Chapter 814. The irritation in Yu Hongyan's heart could not be described with words. The anger in her eyes almost solidified. If she had enough time, it was not that she did not have the ability to break the Yin-Yang morning drum, but now Yang Qing and the others were trapped in the scarlet ground, god-killing formation and urgently waiting for her rescue. To Yu Hongyan, she never feared or retreated in the face of enemies. However, when her fellow sect members were in trouble, she would still choose to save them first. However, her opponent was extremely cunning. He did not seek to win, but to delay her, making it difficult for her to rush to the scarlet ground, god-killing formation. Although the opponent's words made Yu Hongyan angry, it did not affect her rationality and calmness. What really made Yu Hongyan anxious was that she was being delayed here. Kong Nanhua's situation was unknown, and Yang Qing, Zhao Huan, and the others in the scarlet ground, god-killing formation could hold on for much longer. When she thought of this, Yu Hongyan's red eyebrows that were dripping with blood stood erect, and she shouted angrily. The purple armor on her body shone brightly, and countless ferocious runes and curses appeared on the surface of the armor. Violent killing intent filled the surroundings. The three late-stage Yuan cultivators who activated the yin-yang morning drum were also agitated, and they could only feel the boiling, killing intent in their chest. Not only did they want to kill Yu Hongyan, even when they looked at each other, they felt waves of madness and wanted to kill each other. The three of them were also people who had experienced hundreds of battles. They immediately realized that they were affected by the power of Yu Hongyan's 7 kill star armor. Without waiting for them to calm down, Yu Hongyan had already let out a thunderous shout. The dragon demon halberd in her hand shook, and the golden halberd was plated with a layer of terrifying, cold, and murderous purple light. The runes that appeared on the 7 kill star armor seemed to have come to life and rushed towards the dragon demon halberd. In an instant, the golden halberd was also densely covered with countless purple runes and curses. Yu Hongyan shook the halberd, and the sound of rolling thunder sounded between heaven and earth, as if there was a series of thunderbolts. Dark clouds gathered above everyone's head, and countless blue and purple lightning converged from all directions, concentrating in the center of the cloud layer. The strongest and fiercest lightning had always been the nemesis of souls and ghosts. As the thunder roared, the yin-yang morning drum's drumbeat was faintly suppressed. The next moment, Yu Hongyan stepped into the void. His figure flashed, and he quickly rushed near the yin-yang soul-draining drum. The tip of the halberd in his hand trembled, and he thrust it towards the drum with the force of a thunderbolt. The halberd rubbed against the void, and there were bursts of thunder and countless lightning bolts. Yu Hongyan had cultivated the 4 Guardians' heaven-opening scripture and combined it with the weather and weather to create his own martial divine ability, the thunder elephant spear of the 4 Guardians' divine spear. The raging thunder and lightning in the sky suddenly stopped for a moment. It was an abnormal and strange scene that revealed extreme terror. In the next moment, an extremely horrifying thunderbolt that seemed to be able to tear the heaven and earth apart fell down and struck the yin-yang, bereaving drum together with Yu Hongyan. The violent lightning in the sky suddenly stopped for a moment, and the strange scene revealed extreme horror. The next moment, a terrifying lightning bolt, which seemed to tear the heaven and earth apart, struck the yin-yang morning drum together with Yu Hongyan. Although she couldn't push the power of the 7 kill star armor to the extreme, her 3 opponents also couldn't make the yin-yang morning drum exert its full power. The black-robed Taoist was in no mood to provoke Yu Hongyan with words now. His expression was extremely solemn, and he held the skull drumstick in one hand, and the other hand changed the incantation gesture. As the light flashed above his head, a dark and dense yin-chi emerged, turning into a black beast the size of a small hill. It let out a sharp and gloomy roar and showed its heaven and earth form. The white-robed Taoist opposite him also did the same. Dense yang qi emerged, burning and turning into a raging fire. Later, the red fire gradually turned pale and also condensed into a pale heaven and earth form in the shape of a pale beast, which let out a deafening roar. The 2 strange beasts, one yin and one yang, pounced on the yin-yang morning drum together. Then, the 2 Taoists raised the skull drumsticks in their hands at the same time and hit the black and white sides of the drum heavily. The yin-yang morning drum seemed to have eaten a great tonic, but it didn't make any sound. Only gray ripples, which had completely condensed into a substance, spread out in all directions. Even the 2 Taoists carefully avoided the gray ripples, not daring to come into contact with them. Wherever the gray ripples passed, even the rolling thunder was destroyed. Any life that came into contact with the gray ripples didn't seem to have any abnormalities on the outside, but the light of life in their eyes was completely extinguished. Their bodies were still like clay sculptures, but their souls had been completely turned into nothingness, completely shattered by the yin-yang morning drum. The 7 kill star armor on Yu Hongyan's body lit up with an unprecedented light, and it supported her vigorous thunder spear, destroying the gray ripples that came close to her. The next moment, an abnormal trace of red flashed across Yu Hongyin's face, and the power of her physical chi and blood continued to burst out without stopping. After the vigorous thunder spear, the second spear strike erupted like lightning. It was as fast as an aurora, and no one could react at all. The boundaries of time and space seemed to have been erased. The three Underworld Hall cultivators couldn't even sense the existence of Yu Hongyin's second spear strike with their divine senses, let alone see Yu Hongyin's second spear strike. By the time they came to their senses, Yu Hongyin's second spear strike had already struck the yin-yang morning drum. Yu Hongyin's lightning spear of the divine spear of the four symbols divine spear was as fast as lightning. The yin-yang morning drum shook violently as the spear struck, and it seemed to let out a startled and angry cry. It ignored the three Underworld Hall cultivators and retreated. Yu Hongyin used two killing moves in succession and finally forced the yin-yang morning drum to retreat. She didn't have time to chase after them, so she immediately turned her spear and fled into the distance, rushing back to the scarlet ground god-extinguishing formation. The white-robed cultivator hesitated for a moment, but he still raised his hand and shot out a talisman. Suddenly, a vigorous and terrifying blood-red flowing light shot toward Yu Hongyin's back. The aura of magic power fluctuated, and it turned out to be a talisman made by a primordial soul realm cultivator. Its power was close to that of a primordial soul realm cultivator's attack. His original intention was to stop Yu Hongyin, but unexpectedly, Yu Hongyin didn't dodge and used his 7 kill-star armor to resist the attack. Yu Hongyin's face was pale, and she grunted, but she didn't stop and continued to rush forward. But at this moment, more than a dozen people appeared, all dressed like Underworld Hall cultivators in black robes. 9 of them stepped forward, and each of them used their magic power to raise a small flag. The 9 small flags flew in the air, and gray light flashed. They immediately formed a formation, and the turbid, chaotic death chi spread out. In the next moment, the power of life and death suddenly reversed an extremely fast speed. Vigorous vitality emerged from the murky primal death chi. Then, a large number of glowing vines grew out of the death chi, blotting out the sky and pouncing towards Yu Hongyin. Yu Hongyin was furious, but he was worried about Yang Qing, Zhao Huan, and the others who were trapped in the scarlet ground god-extinguishing formation. So he didn't want to be entangled with them, and he just wanted to escape and help. In the face of the vines that entangled him, Yu Hongyin didn't pay much attention. The 7 kill-star armor on his body flashed with purple light, like a light knife, and cut the vines into pieces. But in such a short time, the 3 late Yuanian cultivators who drove the yin-yang morning drum had already come to their senses. The 3 of them looked dignified, and they were a little angry. In addition to the 2 Taoists who were holding the drumsticks, the old man who was holding the yin-yang morning drum also showed his heaven and earth form. Light and shadow flashed above the old man's head, and a giant appeared with both hands to the sky, holding up a huge wheel. The 3 of them activated their power together and poured all of it into the yin-yang morning drum. Once again, they attacked Yu Hongyin, so that Yu Hongyin couldn't escape immediately. Yu Hongyin was anxious. He glanced out of the corner of his eye and saw the vast sea of Ksitigarbha, true brilliance, on the horizon. It seemed endless. At this moment, in the sea of fire, a huge yin and yang tai chi pattern appeared, half golden, half green. Yang Qing sat cross-legged on the ground, his hands forming a seal to support himself. After all, he only had the late Golden Elixir period cultivation, and the Yuaniing period's essence severing blade was a pure attack-type magic weapon, but it couldn't play a role in the current situation. Even if Yang Qing forced himself to calm down and take the most effective countermeasures at the moment, such as burning the poison with the true fire of the sun and resisting the raging fire with the true water of the Taiying, it was difficult for him to resist the formation set up by a primordial soul stage cultivator with his golden elixir period cultivation. The raging poisonous fire kept approaching. Although it was still relatively slow, it was full of unstoppable momentum. Zhou Yunsong had already launched his burning sun-breaking qi, burning a large amount of true fire of the Xidagarba. If this formation was set up by a Yuanying period cultivator, it would not be able to trap him at all. However, the person who set up the formation was Zhang Lai of the primordial soul stage, and the huge gap between the stages was enough to reverse the crushing momentum. Moreover, other than the true fire of the Xidagarba, there was also the ferocious poison. Although the burning sun-breaking qi could also burn it, the effect was undoubtedly much less than when it was used to deal with the true fire of the Xidagarba. At this moment, Zhao Huan was even more unable to help. If it wasn't for Yang Qing's protection, he would have been burned to death by the poisonous fire. His face was full of anxiety. Suddenly, a white shadow flashed beside him. Zhao Huan turned his head to look and was instantly stunned. Miss Fong? Hearing Zhao Huan's cry, Yang Qing was shocked. He looked at Fong Ting and saw that Fong Ting had actually taken the initiative to walk out of the protection of his transcendence energy and walk towards the poisonous fire that filled the sky. Ting Ting. Fong Ting turned back and smiled slightly, but didn't say anything. Yang Qing reluctantly separated a bit of transcendence energy to pull her back, but Fong Ting had already let out a shrill scream. Her whole body flashed with green light, and she instantly transformed into a 10 feet tall poisonous ghost body, breaking free from Yang Qing's transcendence energy. But before she could transform, Fong Ting had already rushed into the sea of fire. The violent poisonous fire landed on her poisonous ghost body, burning it fiercely. Although they came from the same source and were both refined by Zhang Lai, the Scarlet Ground Absolute God formation obviously couldn't differentiate between friend and foe without anyone controlling it. It wanted to annihilate everything that had spiritual consciousness within the formation. The poisonous ghost that Fong Ting had transformed into howled in grief, but it also crazily urged its own poisonous power to fight against it. White threads and dark green ghost light flashed continuously. The poisonous ghost was not far from Yang Qing, and for a moment, it actually managed to share the poisonous fire that was burning towards Yang Qing. But everything was in vain. Under the operation of the formation, more poisonous fire would immediately come to replenish it. The poisonous ghost body became smaller and smaller, and at the same time, it gradually became dilapidated. In the end, there was almost only a wisp of green smoke left, and Fong Ting's figure could be faintly seen in it. She turned her head to look at Yang Qing in a daze, and saw that on the grass beside Yang Qing's feet, the grasshopper that she treasured more than her life, and even when she lost her consciousness, had fallen. Because of a nourishment of the lunar true water, the grasshopper had become green and fresh again. But now, under the high temperature of the flames, it lost its vitality again, and returned to its previous burnt yellow and shabby appearance. Fong Ting blinked her eyes, feeling that her consciousness was gradually fading. Really, I can't go back to the past. Chapter 8:15. Ting Ting, come back. Don't go. Yang Qing saw Fong Ting walking toward Du Hua, and her eyes widened in anger. She was about to get up, but when she saw Zhou Yunsong and Zhao Huan behind her, she stiffly stopped. Calm down. I need to calm down. Only by calming down can I save Ting Ting. Yang Qing clenched his teeth and started to activate a divine ability that he had never fully understood. The divine ability he created after practicing the four symbols heaven opening scripture was called the four symbols yin-yang transformation. However, there were still many parts of this divine ability that Yang Qing had yet to fully comprehend. This divine ability was incomplete and incomplete. If Yang Qing were to use it rashly, it might even harm his own body. His original intention of coming to the southern wasteland this time was to temper himself and perfect his divine ability. However, this kind of training was never achieved in one go, not to mention at this critical moment of life and death. But now, Yang Qing had no other choice. He stared at Fong Ting, who had already turned into a poisonous ghost, and stepped into the sea of fire. He clenched his teeth and shouted, "Duo!" The true sun fire and lunar true water that were guarding him became more concentrated and surged. The true sun fire continuously poured into the lunar true water, and the two completely opposite magical powers started to fuse and undergo a mysterious change. In the center of the lunar true water that had fused with the true sun fire, the water and fire disappeared together and gradually turned into a vacuum. The power of the vacuum was projected outwards, and wherever it passed, the Xitigarbha true flame and the vicious poison started to disintegrate. The four symbols yin-yang transformation, the change of lesser yang entering the void, the yang within the yin, the wonderful state of empty yang. But soon, more poisonous fire surged over. The formation created by a primordial spirit cultivator wasn't something that only Yang Qing, who was at the later stage of the golden elixir, could break. Under the bombardment of the scarlet earth, extinguishing, god-killing formation, Yang Qing let out a muffled groan. The vacuum power generated by the yang within the yin suddenly became unstable and hard to sustain. The solar true flame and the lunar true water also became chaotic. Yang Qing only felt a burst of dizziness. That was the result of the backlash of his own magical technique. Among his four symbols yin-yang transformation, lesser yang entering the void was relatively mild, but it still had such a huge backlash. If it was greater yang entering destruction or lunar entering silence, he would have been severely injured or even killed. However, Yang Qing could not care so much at this moment. He struggled to look at the sea of fire. Looking at the figure that was gradually being engulfed by the sea of fire, he felt as if a knife was being twisted in his heart. I want to succeed. I must succeed. One magic technique after another was unleashed. Success, failure, failure, success. And yet, they continued to attack the scarlet ground god extinguishing formation. Yang Qing's body also began to sway. His golden elixir even began to shake violently. The luster disappeared, and it became dim. However, the purple-clothed young man's divine soul was unprecedentedly clear, supporting him to continue working hard. However, it was precisely because he was so clear-headed that he was in even more pain. He could only watch helplessly as his beloved was slowly engulfed by the poisonous flames. Ting-ting. Yang Qing's voice was like that of a lone wolf in a desperate situation, full of despair. The body of the poison ghost that Fong Ting had transformed into grew smaller and smaller, more and more broken. The green light and the white threads eventually disappeared. Finally, Yang Qing's magic power forcefully broke through the poisonous flames and finally snatched Fong Ting back. However, there was only a remnant soul left. It was like a green smoke, and the appearance of a young girl could be faintly seen in the smoke. She looked at Yang Qing blankly. She saw that the purple-clothed young man, who was usually gentle and elegant, had a ferocious and anxious look on his face. There was a faint trace of blood at the corner of his eyes and across his cheeks. Fong Ting's gaze slightly focused. Her lips opened and closed, but no sound came out. "Senior Brother Yang, there is too much blood on my body. This is the result that I deserve. Don't be embarrassed because of me. To be able to see you once again, I'm satisfied. Senior brother, you must protect yourself." Her spirit gradually dissipated completely. She could only barely keep her gaze on Yang Qing. However, her eyes began to slacken gradually. Scenes that were already incomplete flashed across her mind. When she first became a disciple of the Cloud Water Cave, the boy who was slightly older than her and looked at her curiously. He folded 2 green grasshoppers, one for each of us. There was no need to say much. As long as they sat back to back together, they could spend the whole day happily. He would have joined the team to fight against the fire crows. He narrowly escaped death and reunited with a pleasant surprise. In a moment of forgetfulness, they finally broke through the last layer of lovers, a young man and a young woman. Fong Ting looked at Yang Qing in a daze. In front of her was a purple-clothed young man with a desperate and mournful expression. He gradually became the white-clothed young man with a gentle smile under the sun who reached out to her. Yang Qing looked at Fong Ting and saw that the young girl seemed to want to reach out to him, but it was already impossible for her to succeed. The lunar true water that nourished all things protected Fong Ting. Yang Qing's magic power was continuously injected into the green smoke, but the green smoke was still dissipating little by little. Ting Ting, don't die. Yang Qing's voice was full of sorrow, like a cuckoo crying blood. Boom! The void that was surrounded by the poisonous fire suddenly opened up at this time. Golden flames exploded one after another, breaking through the layers of poisonous fire. A large amount of howling wind raged, splitting the poisonous fire and widening the gap. Then, like a mudslide, the water of the black-yellow river gushed in, surrounding Yang Qing, Zhou Yunsong, and Zhao Huan, helping them to resist and isolate the attack of the poisonous fire. A white-clothed young man appeared at the opening. It was Kong Nanhua. Seeing the scene in front of him, his body swayed slightly and his eyes immediately dimmed. Could it be that I'm still a step too late? Zhou Yunsong and Zhao Huan looked at each other with complicated expressions. They knew that Kong Nanhua was not late. Under normal circumstances, they could hold on until Kong Nanhua arrived. Fong Ting's matter was more of her own will. Kong Nanhua came to Yang Qing's side and saw that Yang Qing, who had always been gentle, now had a ferocious and terrifying expression on her face. She held a wisp of green smoke that was wrapped in the lunar true water in her hand and kept growling like a wounded beast that had fallen into a desperate situation. Ting Ting, don't die. Yang Qing. Kong Nanhua frowned and said in a deep voice, she won't die. Yang Qing was stunned for a moment and suddenly raised her head to look at Kong Nanhua. Kong Nanhua stretched out his hands in front of him and spread them out. For sparkling and translucent sand formed a triangular cone in the air, enveloping the faint green smoke that was about to dissipate. Kong Nanhua's Yuanying came out of his body. He looked like a teenager. His Yuanying floated in the air and stretched out one arm, while the other hand chopped down like a knife. Zhao Huan exclaimed, Mr. Kong. Kong Nanhua's Yuanying expression did not change, but the overall luster became much dimmer. The Yuanying's broken arm turned into a ray of light and merged into the sand. Then, Kong Nanhua's Yuanying's remaining hand pinched the triangular cone, and the vertebral body immediately turned into a small sand grain. The green smoke seemed to have turned into a small worm in amber and was condensed in the sand, like an undetectable thin thread. Her soul was incomplete to begin with, and now that she has suffered such heavy injuries, I can only ensure that this last wisp of her soul aura does not dissipate. However, as long as it does not dissipate, there is still hope, Kong Nanhua said slowly. Yang Qing seemed to be in a daze. She knelt on the ground and stared at the sand in her palm with her bloodshot eyes. Kong Nanhua sighed. In fact, Yang Qing was as clear as he was that the remnant soul was so weak that it had almost completely dissipated. It could be said that there was still hope, but this hope was so slim that even the king of the underworld, who established the underworld in an attempt to unify the two worlds of the living and the dead, would scoff at it. But Yang Qing still lowered her head and held the sand grain in a daze. Between heaven and earth, there was a dead silence for a moment. Only the sound of the dancing flames, the blowing wind, and the flowing river could be heard. As if a long time had passed, but also as if it was only a moment, Kong Nanhua and the other two vaguely heard sound. At first, it was almost inaudible, but it became louder and louder until it was like the roar of thunder. Zhonglai, 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 Zhonglai. Yang Qing suddenly raised her head. Her two pupils, one pure gold, the other dark green. In the blink of an eye, the golden pupil turned pure white, and the dark green pupil turned pure black. Her pair of eyes were like the two extremes of yin and yang. The dim golden elixir in his body suddenly shook. Inside the golden elixir, The power of solar true fire and lunar true water condensed again, but they still seemed weak. But in the next moment, the solar true fire turned into pure yang qi, and the lunar true water turned into pure yin qi. Yin and yang intersected, fusing together and transforming each other. Yang Qing's already dried up magic power recovered rapidly, and his golden elixir also changed from the original state of gold and green yin and yang qi to a black and white fusion. Yang Qing looked at Kong Nanhua and asked, "Mr. Kong, where is Zhang Lai?" Kong Nanhua glanced at him and led him, Zhou Yunsong, and Zhao Huan out of the scarlet ground god-extinguishing formation. They broke through the void and flew towards the hill in the distance. He was there before, but now I'm not sure if his injuries have recovered. When Kong Nanhua brought Yang Qing and the others back to the hill where Zhang Lai was, there was no one there. Yang Qing glanced at the hill expressionlessly and said, "Let's go find fourth senior's sister first." After saying that, he took the lead and flew towards the area where Yu Hongyan was. As they flew, Zhao Huan looked at Yang Qing and hesitated for a moment before saying, "Fifth martial uncle, according to what Mr. Kong said, he should have recovered his primordial spirit cultivation by now. Even if you, Master, and Mr. Kong join forces, you might not lose, but if you want to kill Zhang Lai," Yang Qing said indifferently, "I understand what you mean, but as third senior brother said, he is not on good terms with that old man called Sikong Yu. This time, he is scheming to kill us and Sikong Yu in one fell swoop. If Sikong Yu doesn't die, he won't leave easily." Sikong Yu is a second-tier primordial spirit cultivator. Even if Zhang Lai and third senior brother join forces, it won't be easy to kill him. As long as he shows a flaw, it will be our chance. If we let him escape this time, it will be difficult to find him again with this thieving character. Yang Qing's gaze was cold and silent. "So today, I must find him and bury him here, even if I have to use my own flesh, blood, and bones." When they appeared at the place where Yu Hongyan and the Yin-Yang Morning Drum were fighting, the other party quickly discovered them. After exchanging glances, they immediately prepared to escape. However, with a flash of light, a purple-clothed young man had already appeared in front of them. He had a strange face, and the pupils of his eyes were black and white. There were 2 bloodstains under his eyes, like mournful scars. "Do you guys know where Zhang Lai is?" Yang Qing asked softly. Her tone was gentle and slow, but there was a terrifying feeling that made one shudder. The 9 Yuanying stage cultivators took out their flags and got into a formation. Chaotic, deathly aura circulated, forming twisted and strange vines that wrapped around Yang Qing. Yang Qing stretched out her palm, and the surging solar true fire and lunar true water appeared together. The solar true fire turned into a golden sea of fire, while the lunar true water turned into a dark green stream of water, descending from the sky and entering the center of the golden sea of fire. In the next moment, the center of the golden sea of fire rumbled and shook, as if endless calamities and tribulations were being nurtured within it, wanting to destroy all living things. Rays of dark flowing light erupted from the center of the sea of fire that had merged with the lunar true water. They landed on those vines, and they immediately turned into fine powder. The 4 symbols yin-yang transformation, Shaoyin entering calamity transformation, yin within yang, calamity yin realm. Yang Qing stepped on those vines that had already turned into fine powder and walked forward step by step in the void. Her voice sounded again. "Where is Zhang Lai?" Chapter 816. Yang Qing stepped forward. The black and white yin-yang golden elixir in his body rotated continuously. Yin and yang blended and transformed into each other. He stretched his hands out to both sides. The sun true fire in his left hand merged with the moon true water. The yang within the yin transformed into the lesser yang, entering the void, and manifested the void yang wondrous realm. The moon true water in his right hand merged with the sun true fire. The yin within the yang transformed into the lesser yin, entering tribulation, and manifested the tribulation Een wondrous realm. The underworld hall cultivators looked at each other and shouted in unison, "Charge!" He's Yang Qing, the direct disciple of the Mystic Gates Master. His cultivation base is in the Golden Elixir period. He's one of the weakest cultivators with supernatural powers. We don't have to fear him. Rumor has it that he rarely fights with others and doesn't have any notable achievements. The supernatural power and Dharma spell just now were very powerful, but it must have consumed a lot of his energy. We can't use it too much. Let's go. Streaks of light broke through the void and were about to escape. Yang Qing was expressionless. In the void Yang wondrous realm in his left hand, the lesser Yang entered the void and manifested the power of vacuum, directly sealing the streaks of light. Before the underworld hall cultivators could react, they discovered that their protective Dharma powers were also disintegrated and turned into nothingness under the effect of the yin-yang vacuum force. At the same time, Yang Qing's wondrous realm and lesser Yin entering tribulation turned into heavenly disasters and earthly tribulations, continuously smashing down on their heads. Floods soared into the sky. Meteorites fell, pitch-black storms. The earth shook, and the entire void was destroyed. After being weakened by the yin-yang vacuum force and then bombarded by the yin-yang calamity tribulation, the underworld hall cultivators were instantly knocked down. Yang Qing looked at them and asked indifferently, "Where's Zhonglai?" A mid-stage Yuan cultivator became ferocious. He put his palms together, and a gray dragon made of chaotic death aura pounced toward Yang Qing. Yang Qing pointed with his left hand, and the gray dragon immediately disintegrated. Then he appeared in front of the mid-stage Yuan patriarch and slapped his right palm on the top of his head. In the next moment, countless dark streams of light rushed out and turned into thousands of calamities and tribulations. They attacked like a storm and engulfed the mid-stage Yuan patriarch. He then looked at an early Yuan cultivator. "Do you know where Zhonglai is?" The Yuan early-stage cultivator took out a huge black mountain and pressed it down on Yang Qing's head. This was an extraordinary magic tool of the Yuan early-stage cultivator. In the past, he had used this magic tool to fight against the Yuan middle-stage cultivator without suffering any losses. However, Yang Qing didn't even look at it. He raised his left hand and supported the black mountain peak. In the next moment, the mountain peak began to collapse, and a large amount of rubble fell to the ground like rain. Yang Qing walked past the early-stage Yuan old ancestor and pointed a finger at the center of the other party's eyebrows. A hole appeared, and immediately after, this early-stage Yuan old ancestor's body directly exploded, and endless tribulations rushed out of his body. He walked to another middle-stage Yuan cultivator and asked in a calm and patient tone, "What about you? Do you know where Zhonglai is?" The cultivator gritted his teeth and took out 49 jade talismans in a row, forming a huge formation to protect himself. This time, Yang Qing waved his right hand, and millions of dark and gloomy streams of light pounced forward. The earth, water, fire, wind, and thunder tribulation surrounded the array formed by the 49 jade talismans and bombarded it continuously. In just a short moment, it was destroyed. The middle-stage Yuan cultivator was stunned and roared, "This old man will perish together with you, you little thief." With that said, the Yuan old ancestor left his body and was about to self-destruct his Yuan old ancestor. Yang Qing looked at him calmly, stretched out his left hand, and swiped the air. Before the other party's Yuan old ancestor could self-destruct, his upper body had already disintegrated and turned into nothingness. One after another, the underworld hall cultivators were killed by Yang Qing, and the area turned into a bloody battlefield. The eyelids of the three late-stage Yuan old ancestors controlling the yin-yang soul mourning drum twitched when they saw this scene. "He is Yang Qing? Is there a mistake?" The dignified late-stage Yuan old ancestors did a very funny thing together. After carefully looking at Yang Qing's appearance and hair, they finally had to admit that the young man in front of them, who killed without blinking, did not have a head full of white hair. His appearance was also completely different from Wang Lin, the #1 killing god under the master of the celestial sect of wonders. Go! Go immediately! We can't take down Yu Hongyan alone. If we don't leave with this person, we will lose our lives here. The three of them had the same idea, which was to immediately activate the yin-yang soul mourning drum and leave. But how could Yu Hongyan agree? Earlier, she would rather get herself injured in order to escape and rush over to save them. But she was pestered by the other party, causing her to have a bellyful of vexation. At this moment, seeing that Yang Qing and the others had already escaped from the Scarlet Ground God Extinction Formation, how could she possibly let the enemy leave? Activating the 7 Killstar armor, Yu Hongyan's spear was faster than the previous one, and he killed the yin-yang soul mourning drum. When the black-robed cultivator saw this, he gritted his teeth and actually abandoned the yin-yang soul mourning drum and his 2 companions. Then, he took out a talisman. The talisman erupted with a shocking brilliance, and he was about to escape. However, the dark yellow and gloomy Ganges River surged and directly stopped the brilliance. The incomparably heavy Ganges River sand and primordial chaos true water worked together, seemingly crushing the space into pieces, directly cutting off the path of the black-robed cultivator. Kong Nanhua's expression was calm. She glanced at Yang Qing and did not continue to attack. Yu Hongyan attacked the yin-yang soul mourning drum until it was out of breath, and at this moment, Yang Qing had already arrived in front of the black-robed cultivator. Zhang Lai, where is he? Yang Qing asked calmly. The black-robed cultivator gritted his teeth, and the black beast-like heaven and earth dharma idol above his head let out a gloomy and ear-piercing roar. Endless yin qi emerged from his body, and it was as black as ink. The ink-like yin qi turned into black chains one after another. If the opponent was entangled, they would not be able to use their supernatural power. At the end of the chains was a sharp blade that was sinister and cold. If the opponent was pierced by it, they would be corroded by the yin qi, and their divine soul and physical body would be frozen. Thousands of chains pounced towards Yang Qing. Yang Qing's eyelids drooped slightly, and he clapped his palms together in front of his chest. In the next moment, the dark green moon true water covered Yang Qing's entire body and completely fused into his body. It caused Yang Qing's entire body to be dark green, and it even flashed with a watery light. It was as if he was a water person condensed from the moon true water. Immediately after, Yang Qing's dark green body suddenly turned pure black, and on the surface of his pure black body, a layer of dark blue and gloomy icy blue fog appeared faintly, and within the fog, there was a faint pale light shining. The terrifying power and concept was actually somewhat similar to the absolute yin qi and absolute yin infernal fiend at the disciple of Taishu Temple, Chun Xingyu, who had the absolute yin body. Although it was not exactly the same, it instantly caused the black-robed cultivator's expression to change. The 4 symbols yin-yang transformation, the transformation of the moon entering silence, the yin within yin, the absolute yin extreme realm. The moment the chains released by the black-robed cultivator came into contact with the pale light surrounding Yang Qing's body, they immediately shattered inch by inch, as if they were refined iron frozen by extreme cold. Then they were violently hit and shattered into pieces. Yang Qing, who seemed to have turned into a black water person, could still clearly see his facial features. However, at this moment, there was no expression on his face, and neither was there any emotion in his eyes. Everywhere he was, there was a complete silence. After all, the black-robed cultivator's cultivation was in the late Yuanying realm, which was a whole realm higher than Yang Qing. Although his spell was broken by Yang Qing, the heaven and earth avatar was fully activated, and it was able to withstand the terrifying power of Yang Qing's absolute in extreme realm. There was no change in Yang Qing's expression. He clasped his hands together, and a pale light appeared between his palms. Then, this light enveloped the black-robed cultivator. The black-robed cultivator was stunned. He saw that the world in front of him had suddenly changed from day to night. In the dark night sky, there was only a pale moon, like an eye, staring at him. The dark moonlight caused the world to become obscure and deep. The black-robed cultivator felt that his entire body was in darkness. Although there was moonlight shining above his head, he still couldn't see anything. When he looked down, he couldn't even see his limbs. There was only endless darkness. Here, it was as if he had lost his vision. In his vision, there was only the full moon. Not only that, but the entire world was incomparably quiet. The sound of the howling wind had completely disappeared. Besides his vision, he felt that his hearing had also disappeared. He couldn't even hear his own breathing. In this dark, deep, and quiet world, the black-robed cultivator felt as if he had fallen into an endless abyss and was constantly sinking. Whether it was the feeling of his body or the probing ability of his divine sense, everything was unknowingly lost. In this world, there was an infinite silence and infinite depth. It contained everything, assimilated everything, melted everything, and destroyed everything. All of the black-robed cultivator's consciousness, memories, emotions, and will disappeared in the eternal silence, as if he had fallen into an eternal sleep. Only the pale moon above his head remained. Yang Qing's self-created dermic art, Tai's solitary slumber. Under the shocked gazes of the others, the black-robed cultivator's heaven and earth dharma characteristic, body, soul, and Yuanying seemed to have turned into lifeless clay puppets. The surface of his body peeled off and shattered, turning into nothingness in the end. Yang Qing's body returned to its original state. His expression was still calm, but he seemed more alive than before. On the other side, apart from preventing his opponent from escaping, Kang Nanhua also helped Yu Hongyan attack the yin-yang soul mourning drum. Before long, the late-stage Yuanying old man who was lifting the drum was stabbed to death by Yu Hongyan's spear. Yu Hongyan used his 7-kill star armor to suppress the yin-yang soul mourning drum, while Kang Nanhua blocked the path of the white-robed cultivator. When he saw Yang Qing walking towards him through the void, the white-robed cultivator frowned. As Yang Qing walked, blazing sun true fire appeared and enveloped him. His entire body was pure gold, and there seemed to be countless needle-like beams of light shooting out in all directions. Yang Qing's entire body seemed to have turned into a flaming man made of sun true fire. But in the next moment, Yang Qing's body made of golden flames suddenly turned white, as if he had turned into a white flaming man. The white flaming man was surrounded by fierce and gloomy black smoke, and there was a faint black brilliance flowing in the black smoke. Zhao Huan, who was watching the battle, looked at Zhou Yunsong in shock. Because from the appearance, the current Yang Qing looked somewhat similar to Zhou Yunsong when he activated the Burning Sun Qi and Burning Sun Essence break technique. Because his cultivation was higher, it felt even more terrifying. The 4 symbols yin-yang transformation, the sun entering destruction transformation, the yang within the yang annihilation realm. 9 black lights floated around Yang Qing, who had turned into a white flaming man. Sometimes they turned into 9 dragon shadows, and sometimes they turned into 9 scorching suns. The terrifying power made everyone present frown. It was the terrifying magic art that Zhou Yunsong had used to suppress Dao Yuding and Chun Xingyu at the Kunlun Dharma Assembly, the 9 Suns Annihilation. The creator of this magic art was actually Yang Qing. However, in the past, Yang Qing's cultivation realm and magic power were insufficient, so this magic art was not perfect. Because of this, he did not allow Zhou Yunsong to use it easily. But today, Yang Qing had personally completed this terrifying magic art, and its ferocity was monstrous. The white flaming man Yang Qing stared at the white-robed cultivator and shouted, "Zhang Lai, where is he?" You're tuning in to the Warrior Lore YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.